You're strong.
I know. Just like in the movies.
Welcome to Super Wonder Legacy. I'm Jared, and I'm here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hello, hello.
And today we are talking about probably one of the most respectful, one of the most true to character depictions of... I can't even do it. We're talking with the DCAMU. We're talking with the DCAMU and how nostalgia destroyed a good thing.
You know what? You almost had me, in the first half, because I'm kind of like, wait a minute. I had to double check my notes. Like, what are we talking about? Because I'm like, I know you lying.
I had to, Britt. I had to. So we're going to talk about the DCAMU, and this is kind of a companion episode to like one of our early episodes in the 20s when we talked about the Tommowverse, because this is the universe where half of it was pretty good. Then they started bringing in post-crisis stuff, and then isn't that a kind of a common theme that whenever you include post-crisis, everything goes to crap?
Well, yeah. I mean, look at their comics right now. You bring back what fans on Twitter and Tumblr and wherever else, Reddit, whined about, and then when you give that to them, they don't support it. Or it's written in such a like old-timey way. Like, we're not in the 90s anymore,
Exactly.
So stop writing these characters as such.
So we're also talking about the DC Ass-imated Universe. Britt, whenever you label stuff, it's always this was too good not to use. I got as soon as I read that, I was like, normally I would come up with my own title, but that is so much better. So go ahead.
Because a lot of it really it seemed like it came out of the backside. It really did, and the explanation for a lot of the decisions, later decisions, it just really, it was.
I'll have a few words to say. So we're talking about the movies that took place from Flashpoint and on. We're not going to talk about Flashpoint because, trust me, that's its own BS. We might actually want to do an episode, Britt, talking about Superman and Wonder Woman in Flashpoint, because that, like I said when we had Jit on for the Amazons, the animated movie when I read the comics for Flashpoint, let's just say I was like, the hell did you guys do? This is not Diana, but we'll talk about that later. Make a note of that. That's definitely going to be an episode.
Right.
So now, again, up until right here with, where is it? Right here with Death of Superman, it's actually pretty good, and we'll talk about that later. But the problem with this, as Britt and I hinted, because it started off good, and then nostalgia started to creep in, because you got guys like James Tucker. I don't blame Craig, because Craig redeemed himself with the Tommowverse, so he gets a pass.
And Justice League Action.
Yeah, so he gets a pass on that. So I do not hold this against him at all. The reason why I hold it against Tucker, and I'll basically tease you this. So Britt, you know how I always say that some creatives should stop being involved once a certain point, once a certain time comes in. This is when I bring this up, because here's the thing about Tucker, and because when Sam came on my show, he, to his credit, was very honest. Said, listen, I haven't read comics since the 90s, and it's the same thing probably for Tucker. So I'm like, okay, if you haven't read the comics since the 90s, and I blame Tucker on this, I don't blame Sam, because Sam has done great stuff with this. Sam, if you're watching, buddy, it's not you. But if you're in this and then you start to force in the status quo to a movie universe that's antithetical to that status quo, just because it was the comic when you have when you were reading and you don't understand the way the characters are now, then we have a problem.
exactly. What really rubbed me the wrong way is how Tucker was so like it basically hell bent on his preferences and the way he after the change of for Death of Superman, he was like, well, the newer stuff he couldn't get into because it was for the new audience, and it was like it didn't resonate
It
with
was
him,
selling. It was.
right?
What are you talking
And
about? I couldn't
what's
get into it.
what's also weird about it is that when they first announced Justice League War, and they of course do the promotion and the
Mhm.
for I don't know if it was for SDCC or one of them, but he was talking about the animated movies and how it was hard to get them off the ground because sales just it wasn't um catching the audience. And the last Superman movie, I think Superman Unbound, it flopped for them. And
Yeah.
he basically said that they wouldn't have another Superman movie because Superman couldn't sell. So I'm like, okay, so you said this at the beginning and you start this new universe. Um, Obviously New 52, it regardless of the controversy, it still brought in new interest. And I'm
In
guessing.
Superman, mind you.
Right. So you had that. And what it felt like, though, it felt like that this universe, again, despite its controversy, was selling. And so now you want to shoehorn in the old stuff. And I mean, that's basically what he admitted to, that now I'm going to force this on the audience to be accepted. Yeah, you like your new stuff, but this isn't what I want. So
Exactly.
that is really what rubbed me the wrong way with this because you knew that obviously the old status quo was not selling, and that's the same thing that happened in the comics. It was like post crisis wasn't selling, so
But they don't want to admit that their stuff is not selling because, again, it goes back to my regular theory. It makes them seem old.
age gracefully. You're old. It is what it is.
I love Britt. She's like, yeah, you are old.
I mean, I'm,
Never change, Britt.
isn't it true though? Age,
It's true.
honestly though, if you are confident in yourself, age ain't nothing but a number. So it's like you are the one that's insecure about your oldness. Embrace it and move
Exactly.
on.
Exactly. So we're moving to phase one, which this was the good phase. Like you had War, Throne of Atlantis. I understand why, and I said this when we covered Throne of Atlantis for movie night, why they didn't have Aquaman in Justice League War, even because for those that don't know, in the actual Justice League origin graphic novel, instead of Shazam, Aquaman is a founding member of the league. I get why they didn't do it here because they figured we're going to do Throne of Atlantis. Let's make that his origin movie. That way we can just move on from that. So I understood that, and I'm like, okay, it's fine. It adds a little bit more of a youthful energy to the character. And again, it was almost page to screen for the most part. The new 52. Obviously, Britt, being who we are, I enjoyed that.
Right. And as we always say that, yeah, we would want it to not be rushed, you know, a little bit more depth to it. But for the most part, it was cute. It was to see Clark and Diana's relationship actually animated and, that meet cute on
Plain.
the airplane. It I mean, I enjoyed that part. Um,
If anything, honestly, I think I like the "You're Strong, I Know" in the movie more than the comic.
right. Because that having them upside down or Diana, it just really gave them that um uniqueness to their relationship
Well,
and it
and
was really
also
cute.
when she first sees him, she goes, "By the
By the gods.
gods!"
Exactly. So it was like that sort of thing, those little tidbits to add to it makes it a little bit more okay. So they're definitely going to have them flirt or do something a little bit more. Um, they could have, I would say, they could have had them flirt a little bit more, like the ending part where
Hmm.
he says something about the glasses. Are you free later? That could have been in Throne of Atlantis. And then the kiss part of, Justice League 12
Could have
should have
ended
been,
this movie.
yeah, that could have ended the movie.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. It makes it seem less well because part of Britt and mine's complaints with the way the Superman Wonder Woman relationship was handled is that it was rushed. It clearly was. If they do it a movie apart, it does seem less rushed, even though it's still like rushed, if you will.
All you needed is one more movie to have them flirt a little bit, show them
Or
as a team, a partnership.
how about that be the Superman Wonder Woman movie? They're still flirting, but then at the end they do the kiss.
Exactly. Do something like that. That would have worked, so much better. However, I would say that the double standard, though, is
True.
that Clark and Diana's relationship, yeah, you can say that it's rushed. And we say it all the time, it was in a sense, but it was still cute. It was still something that it felt like a rush of a infatuation, but it did quickly turn into an actual loving relationship though.
Exactly.
And it honestly does remind you of post crisis of them so like meeting this person that is similar to me that can understand me, and you do have that rush. And so that's
Exactly.
the same thing that New 52 did, and they ended up with a relationship and learning from each other. Now that is the way to go, and we can look at it
Exactly.
like that. However, with the traditional relationships, they can not have the development at all, and it's not put under a microscope like Clark and Diana's relationship.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that when we get to those movies. So let's start with War. So we're going to go through each of the movies. Some of these will
Mhm.
be more in depth, some of these will be briefer. But with War, one of my favorite parts of this is that first off, as a Green Lantern fan, Hal was hilarious because I love where he's talking to Batman. He goes, "Do you have powers?" No. You're not just some dude in a bat suit, are you? And then Batman just smiles. I love that. Or it's like when Batman just takes his ring and goes, "What does this do?" And then Green Lantern goes, "You won't do that again." Then Batman's like, "Unless I want to." And I just love that. And I love sassy Batman. And then
Yeah.
speaking of sassy, Diana, when she's fighting Darkseid, she goes, "Come on, Giant. I'm getting bored."
Yeah, they had this
Swagger.
youthfulness. Yes, exactly. And the youthfulness that they had, they weren't exactly antagonistic so much as Jeff Johns had them in the book. It
Mhm.
was just them being like this, and they weren't reckless. It was just a youthfulness to them,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
being sassy, the bantering of Hal and Bruce. Clark, I would say, hearing his dialogue when he was going against Lantern and Batman, it made sense. He had this cocky attitude.
So what can you do? I love that. Or
Yeah,
I love where Batman is heckling Green Lantern and Green Lantern's like, "Shut up."
and it was like it was funny, and it was very high spirits, with
Yeah,
that.
that's the Hal Jordan that I know and love, and that's why I love Hal. This movie nailed Hal. The next movie, nah, but this movie really, really got him really well. I also love the scene where Diana like exposes that Wonder Woman protester for cross dressing, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the way that like Diana would be, as opposed to that crapshoot that was the Pride
Exactly.
issue where she's like, no, just live your truth. I don't care. My outfit makes me feel powerful as well. By the way, can we talk about that based on the outfit? I really dig that costume for Wonder Woman.
I wouldn't be surprised if this will be the costume, the for live action DCU.
I'd be fine with that because what it does, it doesn't show off her cleavage or anything like that. So it kind of it in many ways it sexualizes her, but maintains her allure, if that makes sense. It maintains that balance, as I always say.
Right. Now, I would say that she probably will end up with pants though, like a full like turtleneck with
Oh,
pants,
how
but
about a cape? I want Diana to have a cape.
she might. If she is going with the ambassador role, probably the cape will go with it.
And and then I love where she shows up. She goes, "Hello, warriors," and then Green Lantern's like, "Dibs." And then as he approaches Diana, Clark just flies down and like cuts him off and goes, "Don't." He's like, and then a Lantern just lets him go. I love that. Or it's like, And I love where like Green Lantern is trying to rally people, and he goes, "We need to work together. We need more teamwork, and we can't all be going up to bat." And then Diana goes, "I admit I'm not used to your man's world games." And then it has to be Cyborg to translate it. And then Green Lantern's like, "We got this." And then Flash goes, "That's your battle cry." And then Green Lantern's like, "Okay, smart ass."
Yeah, that type of
It's
bantering
more of like
is
friendship. But Britt, whenever I write because I send Britt ideas all the time of the Justice League doing fun stuff. That's where I base that dialogue off of, because
right.
that's when you make the Justice League feel less like stiff and more like we're just hanging out.
Exactly. And also loving the plane scene of
Mhm.
Diana seeing Clark on the screen and she's like, by the gods.
By the
And then
gods.
and then the Your Strong I Know, we just talked about that, that it was better than the comic because having Diana upside down that way and they're just staring at each
Her
other,
ponytail like flying up. And I
it
will
was
say
so cute.
the other thing I love is at the end where she's outlining how each of the league members are a god, and then Superman goes, "What about me?" And then she goes, "You are like nothing I've ever seen before, Superman." Then there's Steve Trevor being the perpetual sad sack that he is.
I
I just love that. I love whenever they make Steve like, and Steve's here too.
Right. And I mean, honestly, Steve looked old in here, and it's kind of like they didn't know. Steve always looked old to me,
Mhm.
as an older guy that is very much in this or written in this male fantasy type way. And he
Mhm.
is a male fantasy, what man crash lands on an island of women? That is definitely a male fantasy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the princess, becomes the love interest. Yeah, that is pretty much why I don't care for Steve. I don't care for his relationship with Diana in that way because it is the definition of a male fantasy.
Yeah, of course
Um,
it is. Well, it's the
and
definition of Marston's fantasy. Let's not forget about that.
well, that too. And also the fact that when Diana says, everyone else seems like a god, but it's Clark he's not.
Yeah,
He is basically giving us that you are in the in between, just like
exactly.
me.
Before we get that Justice League 12 scene, they're still doing it. And that's why I freaking love it. I also love Diana talking to Shazam when he kind of like screws up the plan. She goes, "Act like a warrior." And then Shazam goes, "Yes, ma'am."
And
I
she
just love
doesn't know because
Honestly, I like Billy being involved in the origin of the Justice League. It works for this.
it does because he's just a kid, with powers. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he's just having fun, but at the same time it's probably a little bit traumatizing because you are basically thrust into this like blown battle, So yeah, it that is really fun for Billy and just
And then
his attitude.
you also have him helping Cyborg, and Cyborg's like, "I don't fit in anywhere." And then Shazam goes, "Well, you fit in with us."
Right. It's really a great dynamic. The way it was built, and again, this is why it ticks us off because was it perfect? No.
But it starts
But
off so good.
it starts off really fun and lots of potential.
Exactly. So then we get to Son of Batman. All right, so this is one that I believe Britt hasn't watched, so I'm going to explain the plot of this.
Okay.
So this is the one where they reveal that the Talia al Ghul thing. They don't hint at like the R wording or like all they say. Well, actually, they do hint that like she spiked his drink. So
Oh my God. So no, they actually did
I
that?
think they actually did that. Yeah.
What? Oh my
But
God. Wait a
so
minute.
Damien shows
So,
up, and the dynamic of Damien is so good because it's like, so Bruce is in the office. He's walking to the office with all of his aides. Damien's already in there, and he goes, "Well, your overseas markets are so suspicious. It's almost like someone's been stealing money for the company. Like he's already like because he shows up and he goes, "Well, I figured I should check out my inheritance."
that honestly, I mean, I didn't know, but that just adds another notch to the jar of being, ticked off at this verse, because why in the world would you adapt Talia spiking his drink, which is what, that implying, knowing how controversial that is. And it just feels like now that Tucker has no respect for female characters beyond, Lois or Harley or something like that. But Talia, Wonder Woman, um, Starfire was okay with the Titans, but honestly, even her, with adapting her whole, she kisses to learn English and stuff, and she was sexualized in a way. But yeah, I just don't like the fact that that was adapted. I feel like
I know.
with this, you can change, certain things within these movies. If you can change a whole relationship and stuff for no reason, why would you keep something that is so insulting to a female character?
Well, because they were adapting straight from the Grant Morrison comic, and they didn't remember that Grant retconned that away. So I'm like, why would you do that if that was even if Grant admitted that was a mistake? But anyway, there's still some fun stuff with this because he shows up and he goes, "You only have one servant," and then Batman goes, "Alfred's not a servant; he's a friend." And and you also have the scene where like he first meets Nightwing, and then it hard cuts because Nightwing was trying to bring Damian back to the mansion. Damian's like tied up, and Nightwing is all cut up from having to fight Damian.
I think I did see that clip if
Yeah,
if it's from this movie, but them having like a sibling fight, I mean, that was pretty funny.
yeah. So they had some fun stuff, and Talia really loves her son. I have to bring that up because a later movie completely craps on
Of
that.
course, of course, of
I'm
course.
just like, what the hell, guys? So that's this, and it's basically doing the whole, because in this movie, Deathstroke is the villain. He kills Ra's al Ghul, and then Damien wants vengeance upon Slade for what happened, and Batman teaches him like justice, not vengeance. You can't kill your enemies for like out of anger because you'll never escape from that.
Oh, that's a good lesson.
Yeah, it's really good, and it's Damien's entire arc throughout all these movies. So that's the overall part of this. And she actually, at the end of the movie, it becomes Damien's choice of whether or not he wants to go with Talia or stay with Batman. He chooses to stay with Batman,
Of course.
which is fun. And I'm like, okay. And it's except for that one Talia thing, it's pretty good. Then we get to another banger, Throne of Atlantis. Now, let me tell you this right now. In addition to doing the Justice League 12, Throne of Atlantis has one of the best soundtracks ever. Like the Aquaman scene where it's dun, dun,
Hmm.
dun, dun. I'm like, oh, yes!
Yeah, that, and also the music to the Justice League 12 Kiss.
Yeah, yeah.
That it really, what I love about that is, yeah, they changed it from the Lincoln Memorial, but I think
It works more here.
it worked with being in Greece, Athens. It it gives it that it's from Diana's perspective
And
too.
it's called Athens Affair. Yeah, and it works. And I like how when Clark is like hovering there and Diana says it's a beautiful view, he looks at her before he says it is.
Yes, those little moments, and that's what I mean. Those little moments really carry the relationship. That it is something that starts, again, as an infatuation, but it does lead to something that is so deep, and especially their conversation, and they also have the conversation later at the restaurant of like Diana now seeing herself that no one is trying to ask for her autograph or not taking pictures or this, um, as in the comic where she was, obligated to meet with the president or meet with some type of official. It was just her relaxing and having a nice dinner.
Yeah, exactly. And then I like the whole this actually works part because it's less complicated. But here's the other thing that I kind of like about this. Here's why I like this and this more than the comic. In the comic, he like takes her out to like a really swanky like restaurant, which works. But I think here, taking her to a more humble place kind of works more because it's like we can be like regular people together. And I feel like symbolically it works more for the theme of the scene.
Exactly.
And then, of course, Lois shows up and ruins things, as she is wont to do.
You know, that really was so unnecessary, you know? And
I
it
will
just,
say, I love the scene where he shakes hand with Diana, and then she goes out. That's quite a strong grip. You know, Diana's like,
but you also see where Lois basically tries to intimidate Diana by saying that she shares a byline with Clark, and it's kind of like, okay, that's all you care about
and we
is
work together closely.
it's kind of like you're trying to Diana does not care. Diana isn't the jealous type. And again, this is what ticks you off because all of that characterization that we see at the beginning is kind of like is totally flipped over and to now you have Diana, you know, acting jealous or whatever with the breakup or something like that. And then but this part, like Diana does, like I said, she doesn't care for anything other than wanting to have a quiet night. And you have Lois talking about a byline and working closely, or you have Lois also, didn't she say something about you're not supposed to like take women to places like this? You
Mm-hmm.
know, they wouldn't want to date you. So it
For
shows
a date,
how,
yeah, it's not, that's my point, but it works more for the theme of this scene.
and but it's kind of like how can you say that but we see in later movies Lois and Clark are in a bar like
Exactly.
you know
Like
that
that's not working for you.
so yeah that the switch from the beginning movies to now to the later movies and how like I said it's kind of like they do a whole 360 is insane and I just don't the more we talk about this, the more it's kind of like, why?
Yeah, exactly. I also like with Arthur, this emphasizes because Britt and I said last year when we talked about Arthur being like a good foil for like Clark, he even says, I was born of two worlds and join me and we will bridge those worlds in peace. And I send Britt this and I go, this should be Clark.
It should be, but now we see that. I mean, he pretty much, was accepting of being the son of two worlds, with Diana. But now we see the plan, that for some reason they wanted to change him to post crisis. And as I said, Tucker, it feels like he just had like this plan all along where he wanted to bring in, or felt obligated in a sense to accept that, yeah, this is the new world of New 52, whether you like it or not, because we're trying to get new fans. He saw that it did have a fan base, but at the moment of you thinking that you have this solid fan base, I'm going to put what I prefer. So
And look
Clark,
what happened. The movies after that subsequently flopped. Funny how that
right?
happens.
So you have Clark where he has accepted himself as, like I said, the son of two worlds. He has accepted his loneliness in a sense and has that understanding and has grasped onto that. And that's what makes him pursue Diana because he understands how she feels. So to see that total turnabout in Death of Superman, it is very jarring.
The other thing I really like about this movie is Mira's design because it's like I like how Diana and Mira both have that ponytail, but like Mira has the anime ponytail. Well, actually, no, it's the Artemis ponytail where it's like
It is
it comes up
Artemis.
and it's like that, and I go that is actually really cool. It works for her. I also love where like the Atlantean soldiers are attacking her, and then he goes, surrender him, Mira, or we'll take him off your smoldering corpse. And the Mira's like, you're welcome to try. See, this movie This universe in the beginning let the female characters be badasses.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. So then we get to, and by right, Britt, I think you're being a little too low with the ratings on at least these beginning movies, because I give this a solid 8 out of 10, I would say.
You know, I was going to say I had 8 at first, and then I was in my zone, Jared. So
You in your hostile zone. So we'll say it's an 8.
yeah, it's an 8.
So Batman versus Robin. This one continues on. This one is the Court of Owls movie, pretty much. So the Court of Owls show up, and there's this court guy named Talon who had a similar origin to Batman. It's just like he was raised by the court as opposed to being raised by Alfred and the League of Shadows, or however the hell they do this. So Batman and Damian are like combating Professor Pig. He's a villain who wears a pig mask and cuts up kids. It was a Grant Morrison invention. So
wow.
Yeah. So the owl so Talon kills Professor Pig, but Batman shows up after Talon leaves and thinks that Damian killed him. So there's this little tension between the two, and Bruce is trying to be a good father, but then he and the son actually come to blows, and then Damian at first goes and joins with Talon, but it wasn't until he finds out that his father is threatened that he decides to leave the Court of Owls and come back to Batman. And then at this point, so the whole movie, Batman's threatening to send Damian to a boarding school. But at the end of it, he goes, there's a place I want to send you. They help me find inner peace. So he sends him to live with some monks. And they they help him work through his anger.
Well, that's pretty neat. I think that Damian, he would be a little traumatized, not because of Talia. It's more so the fact that he is born of, if they could just have them, or well, his origin was retcon, thankfully, of that whole assault thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the strain of Talia and Bruce being distant because of the League of Assassins, and that whole thing of just the Al Ghul legacy, it just feels like it's a lot of pressure, and it is a little dark, and but at the same time, as long as you have Talia that isn't just downright evil, or this distant deadbeat type mother, then the drama that they have, it works. But yeah, if you try to make it seem like Talia is bad, Bruce is the good parent, I don't accept that.
Then you're not going to enjoy Batman Bad Blood, because that's exactly what happens in this one.
Are you serious?
That's exact. So this is the part that royally pissed me off about this movie, because the most of it is really good. It introduces Kate Kane. So in this, Batman supposedly dies, and Dick Grayson takes over as Batman, kind of after Final Crisis. But in this one, it's discovered Batman didn't die. So what happened is he was fighting a villain called the Heretic, who later turns out, all right, hang on. So Batman is captured by Talia and is brainwashed into becoming her puppet. And it turns out the Heretic is a growth accelerated clone of Damian. And this is when Talia makes the heel turn to becoming straight up villain, to the point where she basically, that's why I added character assassination of Talia, because she captures Damian and goes, I'll just kill him, I'll grow another kid.
I hate this.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like,
good Lord.
What? And then Talia just dies. So she blows up in this movie. And I go, oh, God damn it, guys.
Oh, I definitely would have. Okay,
Yeah.
so I didn't see that part. I just, as I said, skimmed through and saw a few clips or whatever. I was like, okay, the ratings, as I said, I was in my zone, so it varies. But
I'd give this movie a 5, honestly.
A 5. That's too. No, I would definitely give this a 2, because the character assassination, yes, of these female characters is unacceptable.
Exactly. Then we get to Justice League versus Teen Titans. This one's a little more fun because we get Clark and Diana's relationship. He takes her to a movie, and I like how she's like critiquing like the theme of the movie, and she goes, "Well, overall, I found it pretty enjoyable." And then you see a little bit more of the relationship where she goes, "By the way, I bought some new glasses. You might not recognize me." And then Clark goes, "Oh, trust me, I'm sure I'll be able to pick you out of a crowd."
That was the I would say it's not heavy-handed of, the sexual undertone.
Mhm.
It was very natural, and when you get it, you get it. So that was very
Because
nice.
I know secretly he's like, or not wearing.
Exactly. Or the fact that he knows basically her body. So it's like that is like that very cute. And yeah, the movie scene where Diana is critiquing how, oh, this is just, you know, a lot of violence, and of course you have a damsel in distress. Now that could be shade on the whole Captain Save a Thought theme, that Superman has sometimes.
I
And,
didn't
Lois,
think about that, and I just love this movie even more now.
yeah, and Lois being the damsel in distress. So yes, that was a little shade there. And also, I mean, Diana wasn't particularly saved. I wouldn't say that because she does say just like in the movies, but at the same time, I think she was being a little bit sarcastic. They tried to make it romantic in a sense, but that scene still was neat. And the part where Diana says, "You can always share your burdens
I
with
love
me."
that. Or how about when he's the one that like snaps her out of being possessed? And I love where he holds her. He goes, "I got you." It's almost like that. I put that in the intro, where she goes, "Just like in the movies."
Yes, that is, again, this relationship was building, and it was so like it was just cute and adorable. And you wanted to see where it was going to go. And honestly, the way that this relationship was going, you would have expected that, okay, at some point they would adapt power couple.
Yeah, they would have. So then we get to Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. Now, all right, so for this one, and by I got unique insight for this one because I had Sam on to talk about this one. So
Hmm.
what's cool about this one, and this is a good one. So this is the movie that established that the Flashpoint movie is canon to this, because previous to that, they didn't talk about it. But in this, the Reverse Flash is the villain, and you find out. So the MacGuffin they're going after is this card that if you die and you have it on you, you bypass hell or like purgatory and go straight to heaven. So Reverse Flash wants that because, all right, so so Flashpoint Batman shot him in the head, but as the round was traveling through his head, Reverse Flash started vibrating, and that like stuck him in time. The more speed force he uses, like the more he runs, that drains. So he's on a ticking time bomb. So he needs that card because otherwise he's going to like die and go to hell. And then Amanda Waller wants it obviously because she has cancer. So she sends the Suicide Squad after it. Now you have and then Deadshot obviously wants to find his daughter because she's like out there, and he's accumulated enough credit where this is his last mission with Task Force X before he's relieved. Then you have Bronze Tiger, who was there, who was the like ex CIA, but like he's like in the squad because he did some bad stuff. But so he's the more honorable one, and throughout the journey, they're trying to like catch up to Vandal Savage's daughter, Scandal Savage, and Knockout, who is a female Fury, but also like who's very clearly inspired by Wonder Woman. And what happens is Bronze Tiger is the more honorable guy, and he tries to fight Reverse Flash, but Reverse Flash takes a tiny knife and like runs around and is chopping him up. In other words, a death by 1,000 cuts. And then he almost gets like he almost manages to kill Bronze Tiger before Deadshot finally shoots him in the head and then kills him. So Bronze Tiger is like dying, and Deadshot basically says, "You know what? They don't. Amanda Waller does not deserve this. You do." So he gives the card to Bronze Tiger, and Tiger essentially uses up the card. but there's no way of knowing if the card's been used up. So what happens is, so Tiger goes to heaven because he's the more honorable like warrior. Deadshot just gives the card to Amanda Waller and says, "Yep, here's the card. See ya."
Oh wow,
And she doesn't like, she isn't capable of using it. And that's the really cool thing about this movie, is that it shows that like Deadshot, while he's an assassin, he's actually to heart. He's not really a good person, but he does sometimes good things for people if like you earn his respect. Or like with Bronze Tiger, he's like, yeah, dude, you don't deserve to you're honorable enough. She doesn't deserve this. You do.
That's actually pretty neat of a movie.
Yeah, and he's still, and then at the end of it, he gets to see his daughter again. Because that's all that Deadshot really cares about is his daughter. He's trying to always do right by his daughter. And they actually did that really well in the live action movie. So This was the last good one. Because then we get to, there's a reason why I use Doomsday's image on this slide.
Because it's definitely Doomsday.
Because this is when nostalgia hits. And so we're going to move through these as well. But these ones, we're going to start ranting more, because this is where it gets really bad. Because even the Batman movie in this got a lot of controversy. I'll explain that later. So this is when nostalgia takes over. And this is also the area where, and again, one of my people, I forget who, commented that the problem with this universe from this point on is that they started to try and force in post. Wait, I think I forgot a movie. Oh yeah, I did. Judas contract. Here's when they improved this. They took out the Slade and Tara having a relationship thing and made it so, yeah, Tara came on to Slade, but he rejected her. Probably because they still want to use Deathstroke as a character and they can't have him in a relationship with a little girl.
Well, duh, like Sherlock.
But this is also the one where they have Starfire making sex jokes, well, inadvertent sex jokes, and I go, oh, god damn it.
Well, yeah, I would say, like, Justice League versus Teen Titans, that was very campy, and they did seem like they were, Starfire was sexualized there too, but it was lighthearted fun. This is where they kind of wanted that a little bit more, and to really show Nightwing and Starfire's relationship, which was fine. That's how it has been. But this is where they start to bring in the post-crisis stuff too. And like I said, it works for a little bit. But at the same time, I think the flashback where it looks like it was the 80s is like, this is definitely like, how old are they? Because you cannot have the 80s designs, and this is supposed to be like, 2017.
Also, none of those other characters show up later. So I'm like, where the hell are you guys? Also adding on to the fact, this movie has the worst ending because it shows up and it's like, oh, Donna Troy exists in this universe. I hope we'll see her again.
Exactly. Where is, like, the way Tucker structured this is definitely his way. Like I said, it is a preference. And yeah, to have Donna just out of nowhere. And I mean, if you were going to have her in here, introduced as like a whatever, the fact that she wasn't even in Bloodlines is kind of like, what are you doing?
Even though, guess what? She was in Judas Contract, the actual comic storyline. She played a role. And I'm like, why? But it's one of those really stupid things. But you're going to get me ranting about Phase 2, Britt. So shall we hop into it?
Yeah, we can hop along.
Death of Superman. By the way, when I was talking to Robert about Crisis and we started ranting about this, even he hated what this movie did with Super Wonder. But I love the -5, Britt. I think you're being a little too generous on that.
I was gonna say -5,000. Just like
even that's too generous. So let's talk about this. This is where when this movie was coming out, because I had seen enough of these to know that Superman and Wonder Woman are a relationship. You should have seen the confused look on my face when I'm watching the special features, and all of a sudden they start talking about Lois, and I go, wait, what?
Exactly.
I think they even released the scene where Wonder Woman drops that the relationship ended, like on YouTube, and I go, oh, god damn it, guys.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, okay, so what happened? A lot of other fans were asking like, okay, did we miss a movie? You know, and Tucker, of course, he got irritated because he was asked like, what happened to the relationship? And it's like, yeah, what happened? You to have them break up off screen and then the lamest excuse. And again, the 180 of Diana just said that she loves the glasses bit, that, you know, that she understands it and she didn't mind it. It was basically like a flirtatious game with them, you know, with the glasses. And for you to say that, oh, that now it's just a masquerade, that she was tired of it, it was like, no, that is not Diana. Diana would never do that. Um,
And then,
and
so he dies. And again, Robert is the biggest Lois fan I know. He's a normal one, but he's the biggest Lois fan I know. Even he hated when they did the "what a lucky man I was" thing. And I go, what? I'm watching this, and I go, this is one of the reasons why people don't like Lois, because to elevate her, they give the Diana stuff to her.
yes, they give Diana's lines, you know, scenes, and have Diana as a mouthpiece, you know, everything like that. And within this movie, you also have Diana as like the jealous ex, you know, that and Clark, he's being antagonistic towards her. For him to even say the whole scene of them training, and when she calls him Clark, and he says, no, call me Superman, and she's like, why? And then he says, because Lois names him that. I'm like, that's the most shallowest, like, what? You know, she did not give him that name, actually naming him. She only put it in an article and then it just kind of like caught on. But she didn't specifically name him Superman, though. And for that bit to be, for him to act like that's such a significant thing and want Diana or anyone else to call him Superman just for that, is such a shallow, egotistical, real loser behavior, you
Well,
know?
and remember, Britt, recently I was watching a documentary about Justice League Unlimited, and one of the things that they were talking about, it's like a panel discussion with Bruce, Tim, Tucker, and all the guys, and they're talking about like Superman, Wonder Woman, and then they talk about like it's a horrible idea, and I go, all of a sudden everything is coming into focus, and now all of a sudden I understand all this stuff, because then you get to Reign of the Superman. Now, let me clarify this. I asked Sam about this because I was like, he worked on this. I was like, I'm not going to not ask him about this. He said, and this is another thing Robert disagreed. Robert hate literally everything that you and I hate about these movies, Britt. Robert hates as well. That's how you know you screwed up. So, all right. So I asked Sam, why all of a sudden this love for Lois, and why all of a sudden like the breakup off screen? So what he told me is because James said that Lois played such a significant role in the death of Superman's story arc, and literally, I kid you not, Britt, I literally said audibly in the interview, no, she doesn't. Because I'm like, in Funeral for a Friend, yeah, even Reign of the Superman, I could see that argument because she kind of does. Death? She's there to hold him as he dies. That's it.
Right.
Like, what are you
And
talking about?
and the thing is, and Tucker, he also said like with this scene of Diana talking about
Oh,
Lois
God.
and all of that, it was for the audience to accept Lois. It wasn't, you know, for them to actually be friends in a genuine manner. It was for like using Diana as a mouthpiece, as we say. And if the audience likes Diana, okay, we show Diana like in Lois and praising her or whatever, then the audience is going to gravitate to Lois. And I'm just kind of like, you know what? This is like truly so messed up. You know, you don't use your most prominent, female character this way to prop up basically a supporting character that,
You know
yeah,
why I
did
think it
not.
is, Britt? It just came to me. I think they want Lois to be what Diana is. That's what
Oh,
they want.
exactly. I mean, you have where it's sometimes where they call Lois like she's the champion of truth, or
I'm
she.
like, oh, so where's her lasso then?
No, they or the fact that they use the whole the pen is more powerful than the sword or something like that. It's like, well, actually, Lois is very manipulative. With her journalism, she's very unethical, given that she is, dating her source, and doesn't disclose that Superman gives her exclusives because he, likes her or whatever. So no, they are very unethical journalists. Anyway, so how is that actually being the champion of truth? Diana, she never lies. She basically embodies truth. She gives herself to truth, you know. Um, and also, even in Death of Superman, where Clark says that Lois knows him better than anyone, it's like, how does she know you when she don't even know that you're Superman? She doesn't know who you are at all, but she knows you better than anyone. And even when he reveals his identity to her, it's kind of like, okay, all he did was take off his glasses,
Yeah,
and that was it.
I'm Superman. You should have seen. So when Talati and I were covering Superman and Lois the last season, when they show how Superman reveals his identity to Sam Kent, I'm like, don't do it. Don't. He literally just takes off his glasses, and I go, oh god damn it, because that is the
I
most late. At least in the movie, he does a feat. He falls into the fire. He heats up her coffee. That's one thing. But you're telling me. You tell me you've been dating him for a long time to the point where he's considered marrying you. You've never seen him without his glasses on.
exactly. That is how you know if with us analyzing this, you
It
see
falls
that
apart. But
it
so it's kind
falls
of funny.
apart.
I recently rewatched Death and Reign for fun. You know what I did? I fast forwarded through all this BS. I'm like, no, 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 I'm out.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's very honestly for fun. That was torture,
the
but
action scenes are fun though, so I'm cool with that.
but yeah, that she doesn't know him, and then to also have Diana. Now they want to do the whole distinction of Clark and Cal. You know, it's Clark is the real person. This is the one that falls in love with Lois. This is who Lois knows, and she knows better than anyone, which is a lie. Oh, and then you have the Kents. The Kents are supposed to be dead. So how are you just forcing them? If Clark is
Post crisis, Brit. Post crisis.
just a mess, and but Diana is saying that she has a special bond with Cal, and but in that sense, her special bond is a closeness that's even, you know, closer than what Lois thinks
It's
she
kind of
has.
ironic, Brit. You talking about special bond.
Right. I feel like that. So we've been like having this rewriting of Super Wonder forever. Then,
Yeah,
um,
you could say we've gone full circle, Britt. You could say we've gone full circle.
yes.
So
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so with with this whole scene, it was insanity for me. I really can't stand it.
Oh, trust me,
Um,
the next movie drives me insane.
yeah, so again with the negative 5 rating, of course, is way below that. Um, and also, I don't like the fact that Lois is now like I think Tucker also implied that after a while he did want Lois to have a significant role. Um and which is fine if you mean like her being the reporter or something like that. But honestly, if this is what you were getting at, the fact of using Diana and sidelining her for Lois, again, as you said earlier, this is why some of us don't like Lois. Like,
Exactly.
stop using Diana as a mouthpiece, as a stepping stool for Lois. If she can't stand on her own as a character, then she's not the independent character. She's not this empowering, you know.
And here's the key part, Britt. She never has been. It's not like she fell off. This has always been the way Lois is. She cannot exist without support from Superman.
Yeah. And, you know, again, for Diana to be swooped up in that and to be humiliated, and it was totally unnecessary. And again, I mean, Tomasi, we talk about him all the time, how he was writing that Superman and Wonder Woman, and it was already a red flag, you know, but to ruin not only their comic book, but also go into um, the animated movies, and then you go into Rebirth, and you just continue to drag the relationship to prop up uh, Clark and Lois' relationship is so petty and childish, and for no reason. And honestly, that's what they get for this verse, to end up being blindsided that WB told them to end it, you know, so abruptly.
Yeah, so speaking of abrupt, Batman Hush. So here's the thing, Britt. Up until the ending, it is Batman Hush. Up until the
Hmm.
ending, it is the comic. Remarkably well. So, how much do you know about about the comics ending? All right.
Not much.
So Batman is going up against a villain named Hush, and
Hmm.
Hush is basically Bruce's childhood friend Tommy Elliot, who wanted his parents' inheritance, so he arranged for his parents to get killed. Like, he cut their brakes on the car and then they crashed. But he always hated the Waynes because the Waynes saved them. So that's the comic. And then it's revealed that one of the architects of this was the Riddler. So what did this movie do? Hush is the Riddler.
That's very lame.
And guess what? So the explanation that we got from the creatives is, well, if we adapted it straight up from the screen, you'd know how the story ended.
Okay, so
Then when I go, then why are you adapting anything, period?
why did you adapt? Okay, that doesn't make sense. So first you want to do a an adaptation of Death of Superman and have it follow closely to the comic and everything. But then when it comes to everything else, you can change things. So honestly, I just feel like it's very much a preference. And as I said earlier, Tucker had already said that they weren't doing Superman movies because Superman was not a seller. So it goes basically what was written in what was that, Identity Crisis or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
when Batman says the only time Superman is relevant is when he dies.
That's
So
why we keep
basically,
getting adaptations of Death of Superman.
that's it. So honestly, is, and also the fact that the Big Seven was used in this adaptation as well to be nerfed for Doomsday, and even Tomasi
Oh
admitted it.
yeah,
Yeah,
because here's what people don't realize. I'm going to go back to Death. Okay, so here's what happened in Death in the original comic. Doomsday steamrolled the Justice League because it was like the D-listers. It doesn't work in this because you literally have the characters that would defeat Doomsday.
exactly. And you know, Diana, she basically took Maxima place. A lot of the Superman fans that were a, you know, 50-50 or are were Super Wonder fans, they knew exactly what was going on. Um, so like I said, you have Tomasi um actually admitting that Diana was, you know, nerfed for him to die. And I'm like, okay, honestly, just have her out the story, just or the movie,
Don't use
because
her. Or like, say off screen, they added a bunch of D-listers. You do everything else off screen.
exactly. But to nerf her for the outcome of him dying, it's very insulting.
Speaking
And
of insulting, Wonder Woman Bloodlines.
this very insulting.
I love this is the first night that you gave a 0 to, which even in that I think it's a little not exaggerated. generous. Because first off, you can tell this one got the ass end of the budget because the animation
Oh,
style is even different. It's even like cheaper. But it's like with this, speaking of off screen, this is Wonder Woman Rebirth, the movie, in that it's all like, let's crap on Super Wonder, let's crap on Diana so we can hold up Steve Trevor, and then let's completely butcher Diana's relationship with Vanessa, because Vanessa was never like this jealous to Diana, if at all. She was always
she
one of
was
her most
never
like ardent like supporters. This is Wonder Woman and Vanessa if written by Tom King.
exactly. I mean, to write, and also writing Vanessa is like this emo kid, this troublemaker or whatever that just has this, yeah, this whole attitude and ruining the mother-daughter relationships, and even with Hippolyta, for Hippolyta to want to fight Diana, before she leaves and basically banishes her, and like you can never come back. In Perez run, Diana can come back. I think she stays gone for a little while, maybe up to a year or two, but she could go back home,
And
you
even
know.
the DCAU, they actually make it where as soon as you cross that barrier, you forget the location of the island. So I'm like, at least there they have a legitimate reason.
But here Diana can go back home. And again, it really shows the 180 360, because in Justice League War, you have Steve trying to tell Diana what to do, be possessive and everything like that. And she couldn't stand it. She didn't like Steve like that. She wasn't even like giving him any type of attention, and that was his problem. Now you rewrite it here, the whole revisionist thing, just like with Death of Superman with Lois. You have her now, she's trying to flirt, or now she's, liking Steve or something like that. And it's very much like trying to give him validation. And for her to, yeah, the same of how Rucka wrote, Clark and Diana's relationship, throwing it under the bus there, is how they try to throw it under the bus here. And Diana is written as so shallow because she's saying, "Oh, you never let me fly with you," and Steve says, "Oh, but you were flying with Superman," and she says, "I don't fly with him anymore." And it's kind of like, Diana, why do you care about flying like that? Like that is so. It just did not sound like her. She does not care for power. She doesn't
I
care.
know.
That wasn't. It was definitely giving very much rebound. It was definitely just giving desperate. And for you to say, "Oh, I want to fly" or something, you want that same type of, I don't know, gratification of a not even a relationship. I don't know what that was. And then at the end, when Julia dies and Vanessa is going on a rampage and everything, you Diana says that like she's alone, and the only thing or the only person that means something to her is Steve. And I'm like, here y'all
Also,
go.
I just want to say this. You know how the Wonder Woman fandom wants like only women to work on Wonder Woman? This movie was written by a woman.
Exactly. And that's what do I always say? I always say it does not matter the gender, because they can female writers can screw up too.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
anyway,
I
so
mean,
mhm.
Wonder Woman has also a female editor. And
Yeah,
look
we,
at
we
her.
all know how that. Well, she's supposed to have an editor, but we all know the editor doesn't do anything. So speaking
Right.
of doesn't do anything, so at this point they're told to wrap up the universe. So they literally murder everyone in Dark Apocalypse War. Like they rip off Wonder Woman's arm. And okay, here's my question: if Darkseid could create paradooms this entire time, why didn't he do that earlier?
Right. Okay. So one more thing about
Now,
Bloodlines.
real quick,
Mhm.
legit, I think a -5 is a little too like brutal for this because I do enjoy parts of this movie. I just want to be clear on that.
Jared. Okay. One more thing about Bloodlines.
Yeah.
So with this, as you said, it was basically trying. It was an afterthought, obviously, and I think didn't Sam Liu pretty much admit that this was like, you know, and trying to combine a lot of Wonder Woman's
'Cause
lore in one.
they were trying to give Wonder Woman the Hush treatment, where it's basically like taking you on a tour of her universe.
And honestly, it did not work. First, you are trying to adapt Perez. Steve should be old as dirt. Like,
Well, actually, according to what it's based on, it says it's the first trade of Greg Rucka.
how is the first trade of Rucka what? Because Julia and Vanessa are not in Rucka's run. Um, and you also adapt Medusa. It's like, so how, what is this based on? No, you are adapting, you know, yeah, the the most important parts of Wonder Woman, but at the same time you're mashing them together and they don't make sense though. And also trying to ride the coattail of the 2017 movie. So
How'd that
it's
work out
like,
for you guys? How'd that work
right.
out for you?
And Tucker, like I said, I think earlier, that Tucker was very salty that this movie pretty much bombed. The reviews were bad. I think Reign of Superman actually, the sales were bad there and the reviews. So that's why they combined Death of Superman and Reign of Superman together as one movie, because on its own, Reign did not, stand. So the same thing happened with Bloodlines, is that it just, you know, didn't do. So Tucker, he acts like Bloodlines doesn't even exist.
Something we have in common. So then we get to this one. All right. So in this movie, the Justice League decide they're going to go kill Darkseid because of everything he's done. They show up. Okay. Again, if he could create Paradooms this entire time, why didn't he do that earlier?
So, okay, so this movie, Tucker said on a podcast that he wanted more Titans movies and he wanted Justice League Dark. He did not care for obviously the other Justice Leaguers. It was just he really just wanted the regular Justice League to be, you know, post crisis status quo. And it's funny that after Bloodlines, this is the last movie. Diana is mute. She does nothing. She's not a strategist.
She gets her arm
Steve
pulled off and then turned into a Fury.
Steve is nowhere to be found.
Ah.
Nothing. No significance whatsoever. But again, you put Lois in this position though, as she's the one that's being a strategist. She's the one that's
She's the leader. It's like when Tom King or Tom Taylor or any of the Toms try and make it where like she is the president of America.
exactly. So it's very much you're putting Lois in Diana's position yet again. Um, and even the fight with Harley, it was so like, are you serious? So Superman leads the charge to basically have a suicide mission and have half or majority of the hero community slaughtered. And so it seemed like he is able to go back to Earth, all in ruins, but he marries Lois at some point. And it's like, so you are living a life or whatever with Lois until something happens, and now you have to go back, and I guess help whoever is alive and stuff like that. But it's very selfish. This Superman becomes very selfish with Lois and shallow, the same way Diana too. And this is definitely where Diana, I mean, having her turned into a fury and half robotic, and also what happens in Justice League versus Teen Titans when Diana is possessed by the demon, how to get her from the possession of Darkseid. Constantine does the same exact scene.
Yeah,
And it,
exactly.
it would have been like, if they actually wanted that emotional, full circle thing, it would have been Clark. But I think the only thing he said was Diana, like he's surprised to see her that way, but he doesn't have any type of true emotional reaction to her. And I'm kind
He's
of like,
like, "Oh, Diana, I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry this happened to all of you." And I go, "Okay, bro."
yeah, it's so like
And then Lois is the thing that motivates him to like get his powers back and like not be demonically possessed.
again, you put Lois in this position where it's it's kind of like they are the ones that make Diana and Clark seem like these shallow gods because why are these two acting like they can't function without Lois and Steve and so selfish and questioning themselves or yeah, not caring for anyone else until they tell them to. You know, that's
Exactly.
it's so ridiculous. So and this movie is so brutal and gruesome for no reason.
I will say the only plus this movie has, this leads to the Tommowverse.
That's the only plus. But at the same time, even that's not enough because you are so like just because WB tells you to end this verse doesn't mean it didn't mean you have to be so bleak like
It
this.
doesn't mean you have to like murder it.
Yeah, that was basically Tucker saying he gave up, and it's like it's your fault because you know whatever ego tripping or whatever and you messed up, you lost the fan investment and everything, and again that's your fault. So and yeah, WB, they are reactionary to things, but again, to just throw in a towel in this horrific way was unnecessary.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is the thing. Overall, 4.5 out of 10. That's about accurate, I think. Well, the first half. How would you rate the first half before death?
I would give it a honestly, I would give it a 7.5 or eight.
I would give it more of an 8 because you have the Talia stuff, but overall in terms of Clark and Diana, it's about a solid 8. The rest of it, actually the second half I give a 2.
Well, that pretty
Because
much
it's just
averages
one.
out.
It's essentially like you're walking through a machine that with every step you take, you get kicked in the nuts. That's what that's like. That's what it's like. And the further you go, the harder it kicks.
You know what? You talk about my colorful
This is guy humor, Britt. This is guy humor. But that's kind of what it is. And I go, what are you guys talking about here? But yeah, it is. It's a kick in the nuts, particularly as a Super Wonder fan. Again, I will never forget the whiplash I got when I was watching that marketing. They're like, oh, Lois is the most important person in Clark's life. I'm like, what did I
what happened.
miss?
Exactly. And yeah, he was asked that, and he did not really have an answer. It was just like, well, they are
Lazy.
together. Yeah.
This is why I'm like, I don't hold the creators of the DCAU to such high esteem because of this crap.
Yeah, when you and the fact that again these creators in general, they have a problem with younger fans wanting something different. It's like, I'm sorry that I don't like your childhood, whatever, but
And remember,
this
Britt,
is
you should want this. And I go, hey, listen, dude, in a capitalist economy, which is basically what we operate under, I don't know what the hell you're operating under, but you don't get to tell me what I want. If you're providing something like this and I like it, you don't get to tell me, no, you should want this other thing. I'm like, shut up and give me what I'm paying for.
right.
As you can tell, I'm very like, with this because most of these movies I enjoy. It's just I don't like seeing something I like because you know what it is? This was literally a repeat of what happened with the Post. This is Tomasi. This is Tomasi on Superman and Wonder Woman. This is part 2. And like Tomasi is basically a sledgehammer to the balls, and this is a machine gun. I'm making Britt laugh all the time with this one. But that's what this is. That's what this is. Because it's like it's the 1-2 punch, Britt. And this contributed to why I didn't pick up DC Comics for 4 years.
Well, yeah. And that's pretty much why I honestly haven't really fully back into investing into, DC because yeah, they do things like this. It's like they get, the fans to invest in something and then they take it away and you have some writers that want to throw it under the bus and it's like why? You it was a something successful. I'm sorry or not sorry that it was successful.
I'm not
Isn't this
sorry.
what you want? You
I,
know,
I'm not sorry at all. In fact, I'm excited. I'm like, yes, burn post-crisis to the ground. Burn it up. You know what I am? I'm that meme of like the house burning down and the little girl is looking at the camera all smiling. She's like,
smirking.
yeah, that's me. I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm breaking out s'mores. I'm like, yes. So then we get to, let's talk about Clark and Diana's relationship, which again, this was the highlight of this universe because this was the first animated universe that actually did it. And it was something new. And then you had like, they started to like mature and grow together. And that's when it was like they were really, and I feel like, again, if I were in charge of this, I'm like, it's a wasted opportunity that they're together and you never did a Superman Wonder Woman movie.
I mean, that's what it seemed like it was building to. And honestly, if how they did Hush with having Batcat break up at the end, I wouldn't be surprised if Tucker would have adapted Power Couple, but at the end have Clark and Diana break up. So
I
I'm
no, you know what he would
honestly
have done? He would have done the one where Superman loses powers to Vandal Savage and goes, "I don't know if I love you anymore."
right. So honestly, that is a blessing in disguise that it wasn't adapted.
Yeah, exactly.
We
So
might have
then,
wanted it, but yeah.
exactly, narrative justification and growth. And again, it's like this is what I loved about this, and this is why I love the new 52 in general because these characters were younger, we got to grow with them and see how they grow into those roles. But then you have the impatient fans; they're like, no, they have to act like these characters now.
Right. I mean, you were able to grow up whether you were a pre-crisis fan or a post-crisis fan. You was able to grow up with that iteration of the character. Why is it so difficult now for the modern generation to have an iteration for themselves to grow up with? It like why is post I think pre-crisis fans were the same way, but post-crisis was able to flourish as however long it did though. But post-crisis, it's kind of like they are really like hell bent on it's what I want and that's it. Like a brick wall, steel
It's
wall
like,
is
no, I want my way. Meh.
right. And it's so ridiculous because you are ruining, any type of development, in investment, longevity for these characters. Yeah, they've existed for this long, but at the same time, I mean, you have
Well,
other
remember, post
media.
crisis is when DC was told you have to improve your sales or shutting you down. When remember Britt, and this was a eye opener. I was talking to a post crisis fan. I brought up all this stuff to them. And this is a person that hated the new 52, and then they said, "I don't care." And I go, "This is the one time I am going to say this." Then you are not a DC fan. If you're putting the health of the company below your own preferences, sorry, you are not a fan. And before you guys try to turn that around on me, because Super Wonder was selling, so we have the authority to stand on that.
That's true.
If it would be again, it'd be one thing if it wasn't selling, we'd be like, okay, it's something we can like, but we get it. But no, it was one of the top selling books at DC. So screw you.
Outsold the Super Sons, outsold Rebirth Trinity.
By a drum, by no, you're downplaying this. It spanked them hard. It didn't just outsell them. It walked into a club and it's like, drinks are on me, boys. That's Super Wonder and Rebirth Trinity, Super Sons, and Superman was like if you just try to pay for drinks with like change. That's all it is. You take a big wad of change. It's like, I think that'll cover it. I'm out. And then you trip on the way out and then throw up.
Wow, that is a very
I'm very heated right now, Britt.
I can tell. I can tell.
So then we get to the relationship themes, which again, don't tell these people this because because they will ignore this. But again, this is the reason why I love this, because again, because with Super Wonder, here's the thing. You can have, you don't have the damsel in distress relationship, which from a story perspective, that hampers the story. But in here, it's like Clark doesn't have to save Diana, and Diana doesn't have to save Clark. They can save like each other and save the world together. It's like, again, the best way to distill this is in Charles Sewell's book, when Superman kicks the crap out of Apollo and like a boss. He turns to Diana, and this is the part that sealed it for me, Britt. He turns to Diana and says, before you say anything, I know you could have taken him. And Diana's like, yeah, I know. I enjoyed watching it. And then there's Strife in the background going, oh my God. See, that's the thing. It's like you can have that moment. It's like, I know you could have taken it, but you know what? I like to do that from a symbolic perspective. And Diana's like, you know what? I appreciate that too. That's great. So that's true gender equality. They're both powerful, but they both are, neither one, for lack of a better term, neither one needs the other, but they still need each other, if that makes sense.
Right. It's not something of codependency as they do with the traditional relationships. I mean, even the new Superman movie, it's James Gunn saying that Lois doesn't need Superman or Clark. But yet in an interview, Rachel did say that she does have help with things with Superman. And I'm like, of course, because she needs him as a source for stories. But he says, James Gunn says that Superman needs Lois, more than she needs him. And in that way, if you are to know what pretty much that he needs her in that sense of acceptance, that, and especially maybe one of the themes of how they develop or destroy or something like that of Krypton, and all of that. He, as I said, he needs that acceptance. So with Lois, that's what he's looking for, and validation, for the way that he lies and pretends and pass, every day in life. Honestly, that really holds back the character. And if you are standing for truth, what he embodies with Lois is not the truth. So how
Exactly.
you are romanticizing lies of omission. And I can't stand that Tomasi put that in Superman and Wonder Woman during
Oh,
the Truth
yeah.
arc, when Clark got mad and said that Diana did the whole lies of omission thing. It's like, you've been doing that forever.
Yeah, and you may not know this because the universe was rebooted, but that was basically the summation of your marriage to Lois. So I'm like, what are you doing, brother? But that's the really, I'm surprised again, Britt. If I ever had a Superman run, I would have someone call out Lois and say, "Did you get a Pulitzer for writing about your husband, about Superman, when you're clearly in love with him?"
And what's so funny is that the Wonder Woman editor, she's the one that edited the Lois story, backup story, where they admit that she got her Pulitzer from writing a story on Superman, and basically giving Clark that credit, that the only reason why Lois has awards is because of him. And I'm kind of like, this is not empowering. This is not showing you
She needs a man to
romanticizing.
be relevant. Isn't that
Right.
very, Britt? Isn't that feminist?
Yes, it is. It's very
That's
feminist.
the Tom King definition of feminism right there.
It definitely. Oh, Tom King would love that. Yeah,
Yeah,
especially with what he's
exactly.
doing with Wonder Woman. Yes, he would love that.
And then you find out that Lois has always had a crush on Steve Trevor. I'm sorry, I had to put that in. So then you get, and then also with the public perception. That's why when I had comics explained on the show, and no hate to Rob, he's a great guy. I had a blast talking to him. He's one of the people that helped me get back into comics. But when he said there's no stakes between the two of them, and I go, is there though? There definitely is when you actually read the Superman Wonder Woman book. So I'm like, there you
How is it
go. It's
no
like,
stakes?
yeah, it's like public perception. Or how about this, Britt? Here's how you know there were stakes. They formed an entire Justice League team to counter the Justice League because of this relationship.
Yeah, how can anyone say there's no stakes when you have them together, you are obligated, expected to create something new that could take on both of them at the same time. Like you have to make something that's powerful, and it's not just physical. It's something that really triggers them emotionally and intellectually. It can't be, it's not something that they can easily punch or, using just that physical power. It is something that they have to work together with. So yeah, to say that there's no stakes is something that
It's very reductionist, as a matter of
yeah,
fact.
and also, I mean, to say there's no stakes, but yet you have Lois that even if she's captured, and that's like a running gag now, she's going to be saved. She's not going to die. And
That's
even if
why
she,
I had that reaction when I read like World Saga and she was in danger. I go, what do I care? He's gonna save her.
right. I mean, or they'll do anything, bend over backwards for it to be a happy ending. You have Mark Waid saying that Superman can't do anything wrong, or stuff can't happen in to even have the consequences that go with it. Um, we see in events absolute power. It's kind of like that didn't even happen. You know what we want for Clark and Diana's relationship, what we expect are challenges. We expect there to be consequences. And these writers do not want to give that.
Because that requires more creativity. It's like, let me put it this way: Shelterverse, Britain. Without spoiling what Britt and I have planned, or like even in Odyssey, we place them in these positions that their relationship is strained, or even their emotional states are strained. So if you are creative enough with the story, you can create stakes, even if you don't think there are. If you create them, guess what that leads to, Britt? Guess what that brings? Stakes.
Exactly. And yeah, like you said, I would say that Odyssey is probably like right now, um, the most dramatic and strained of, you know, of writing their relationship, of just having those consequences that are ongoing. And then yeah, we have Shelterverse that is ongoing and goes from, as we've said, there's four to five sequels to that. And
And don't worry, those will be done within the next 20 years.
oh hush, hush.
Yeah.
Um, but these stories that we write as fans, yeah, they are going to have the consequences. And I know that um with these characters and with them having the ongoing, thing and being main continuity, they can't make too many changes, whatever. But at the same time, I mean, they have to have some change. They have to have something that can help them evolve. But it just feels so stagnant. It feels like you are limiting everything that you do, just to keep it safe. And no,
Exactly.
I with Superman and Wonder Woman, there's no way that any writer would want to play it safe with them.
Exactly. So then you get to play. Speaking of playing it safe, as a matter of fact, Britt, you keep giving me fantastic transitions. So it's like, again, it's all of that's what it is. You know what this is? These people aren't creative enough to think of new stories like Clark and Diana. So they're like, I'm just gonna go back to what I remember because that's the only thing I'm capable of writing. And I go, then maybe you ought to either retire as a writer or like honestly, Britt, I'm at the point where I'm like, maybe we should start gatekeeping creatives. I'm at that point because the first we got Tom King on Wonder Woman, and then we get this. I'm just like, at
Right?
this point, we gotta tell people no.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, and while you have those hard images up, you also have in Death of Superman where Lois is like to say, call the Justice League that Superman isn't supposed to fight. Like he is supposed to stay with her and to let the League handle Doomsday. That was so selfish. But in contrast to Diana, after, she took on Doomsday, and um wait, before that, you have Clark, his sole focus is Lois, you know. And while everyone else is Doomsday terrorizing and everyone else is, being nerfed, and then you have Diana, where she takes on Doomsday. And it's quite funny that her fight with Doomsday is the most memorable aspect of this movie, and that is the scene that's shared the most.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Isn't that funny?
and then where she's down, basically, and she tells him, you know, to kill Doomsday. Do whatever you
Otherwise,
have
he'll
to do.
kill everyone.
Yeah,
That is such an emotional scene.
but yet you have Diana again. Diana's the one that's being sacrificial in a sense. She's the one that's putting the world first. But what does Lois do? She tells him to stay with her and call the
Exactly.
Justice League to handle it.
But by the way,
I
Britt, have I told you what I would do if I could rewrite that scene?
No, but let me go ahead and prepare.
All right, so what I would do is that so Diana says, "Take him down, Clark. Don't hold back, or we'll kill everyone." Then she leans in and goes, "And punch him extra hard for me." That's like my play off that one scene in Doom before he leaves, and she goes, "Bring me his head."
Aw, see that
That's what you could have done.
with putting Doomed
It's
in it.
literally that simple, Britt. Well, actually, just do Doomed.
Well, yeah, that's
We'll
true.
talk about that later because I saw you did you did your version. But so then we get using Wonder Woman to validate Lois. This is what will forever make me more of a fan of the Tommowverse, because they had every opportunity to do this, Britt. Particularly in Crisis. Not once did Diana or Lois be a mouthpiece. All it was here's Diana, here's Lois. They're doing their own things, even though Lois is kind of out of place in a Crisis movie, but that's beyond the point. But it's like Diana
True.
was just actually, she was a mouthpiece. Diana was a mouthpiece in Crisis, a mouthpiece for how awesome Wonder Woman is. That's it. Like, when she's riding a freaking T-Rex.
True.
Like,
True.
that's the thing. Whereas in this is denigration of a character. This is when this is why I loathe Lois, because when you have to denigrate Diana, Wonder Woman, your third pillar of a character, to hold up Lois, maybe Lois is just a crappy character.
And the thing is, it's not like you can market Lois,
You
You
can't,
can't.
because she's just generic journalist number 2. I'm sorry. That's why there's never any Lois cosplays.
That's true.
Why do you think, in terms of couples cosplay, it's always Superman and Wonder Woman?
True. True.
Maybe you should, or like Hot Topic, maybe you should learn a lesson from this, DC.
I mean, again, even now with the marketing of the Superman movie, I think they had Funkos, but okay, every character gets Funkos. And
Except for,
that
I don't think Lois got one, though.
Lois got a Funko,
All right.
and
She didn't get an action figure. I love the people freaking out that she didn't get an action figure, and go,
what are you gonna do?
okay, action figures for the most part is like also based on what kids are going to play with. What are you going to do with a Lois action figure? Here,
I
I'll
guess
be annoying in 6 inches.
I guess you have to have like Superman carry her or something like that.
Yeah, I know, that's all you could do. But I'm like, besides that, it's like, there's nothing at least with Hawkgirl, you can hit stuff. I'm like,
Right.
what do you think? So
Yeah.
that's what will always damn the second phase 2 of the DCAMU is these scenes. By the way, I'm going to stress this again. Even Robert, who is the biggest Lois fan that Britt and I both know, hates this scene. He goes, yes, I 100% agree with you that this is cringe.
Yeah. And
that's how you know you
very
screwed up.
ham-fisted. Yeah, very ham-fisted. You know that this was written as, whenever you have to use another character that obviously is part of the love triangle or the ex or something like that. If they have to be like over the top in a sense like a cheerleader for this other relationship, yeah, you know that the writing is very forced. It's something that is unnatural, you know. So again, with this, for Tucker to say that he did this on purpose, he basically begged, you know, executives and with whatever pitch he had for this scene to happen so the audience can accept Lois.
How'd that
And
work out for you, brother?
yeah, it if you have to beg and do all of this, you know you're wrong for it. And I don't know why. Well, no, I do know why. Because again, it's all about ego and having an ego over fictional characters is so lame. Like it's again loser behavior, even as an executive. Like, what are you doing?
Exactly. So then you get to, yeah, it very much undermined the story because, again, you had the layup. Even if you didn't want to do Doom, you could have still done Death of Superman, but involved Diana. And guess what? You could have had literally everything here because it's like, because it's all of this except for like can you imagine if they did the Death of Superman, but it's Superman. Well, I got it. Superman, Wonder Woman, Doomsday. That's how you'd redo the Death of Superman, but make it a Superman Wonder Woman movie where like you can have the entire movie is like that. It's like Diana and it's like Clark saying, you know, Diana. It's like them having a particularly dangerous battle, but like with like kryptonite and stuff, and Diana's protective because she's like, you could still die, Clark. And then essentially Clark says that like if I died in combat, you know, it would be besides the woman I love. So you go through that. Doomsday shows up, they fight. Diana it's like knocked back by Doomsday, kind of like the scene where Doomsday's about to stab her with the sword, and then Superman takes the blow for her, and then Diana kills Doomsday. In other words, Superman is stabbed and killed air quotes, but essentially, and then Diana beheads Doomsday.
I would I so prefer that. Yeah.
That's how you do it, because that's the way you get the Death of Superman, but you do it in a new way, and you don't have to undermine established lore.
Yeah, and also other fans were saying that Clark and Diana's relationship was built up. Like it made sense for her to be more in mourning of him. She had, you know, a closeness. Lois did not. And yeah, as you said earlier, if they were in a relationship, why didn't she know that he was Clark, Superman?
Oh, because
Why did she never saw,
Britt, she's never seen him without his glasses on.
which does not make sense.
There's a
Really
lot of
does.
reasons why that doesn't make sense. I
It
got news for it.
really does not make sense. And yeah, just that it's also the fact that it seems that the Kents, if you had them alive, they never knew about Diana, you know, with being in a relationship, you know, with her. And I mean, even Lois, when for Diana to say that, oh, I never thought of us as rivals, you never had you don't know her. They don't know, like, all of the whatever development that we were supposed to see, it never happened. So how can you write Diana saying, I never thought of us as rivals? Diana doesn't even know Lois to be a rival. And then to say that Diana is an Amazon, but she doesn't have any friends. Diana is the social
She's
butterfly.
the
She is the
friendliest friend ever. Or how about this off screen? Because I know you love doing that. Add a bunch of female members to the league.
no, they didn't want to. They wanted Diana desperate for a friend, and for some reason that friend is supposed to be Lois. And they do that all the time where if to solidify Clark and Lois's relationship, it's Diana that has to bow down to Lois and act like she's the friend, you know, that's supportive of Lois and everything like that. And Lois is quote unquote friendlier to Diana when she knows that that boundary is set. But when it's Clark and Diana that are close, it's Lois the one that's jealous. That, you know, we saw it in Immortal Beloved. We saw it in even Wonder Woman 170. And when when thinking about this scene, more than likely this is the conversation inspiration from Wonder Woman 170. And I'm kind of like, you know what? This is so insecure. And it's
Exactly. Well, speaking of insecure, this is also when this is literally rebirth when you try and combine. I swear, Britt, I say this every single goddamn episode we do about how the ineptitude of the comics is mirrored in both the animated and live action movies. Because the minute you try and merge Post Crisis and New 52, you just create a hodgepodge of BS.
yeah, because the emotional investment is just not there, and as Chloe's fans will act like, they are winning, but when you have to tear down other female characters, when you have to tear down other relationships, not only tear them down, but also have Clark be antagonistic and the characters are so distant from each other. Like Clark and Diana can't even be friends.
Exactly.
That is
That's how
how,
insecure you are. But remember, DC still markets them as best friends.
sure, but in story, I mean, I would rather have it in story than just marketing it in such a shallow way. You know, it,
Exactly.
it, it has no merit, no meaning.
Yeah, and then they even use it as like as like they revise it as a narrative shortcut, and it's like, yeah, the death of Soup. You know what's kind of funny? I thought about this when I was putting together the slides. That scene of the flag, it's very of the cape on the post. It's kind of like it's not just the death of Superman; it's the death of the DCAMU. That's what
Yeah,
that is.
yeah, it was. I mean, right after that, for them to kill him off and then you like I would say that um Reign of Superman is a continuation. So this is just one big movie,
Hmm.
but to have your last two movies like that is kind of sad that you have Death of Superman in the comics, and that was basically the catalyst of um the comic book market crashing. And now you have Death of Superman animated, and you crash the entire universe basically. That is very the irony of that, and you know, devastating in a poetic type way. And yeah, I just again, Superman, let the story go, because Superman is more than his death. He should be in a way, but yeah, for Superman to only be relevant because he got punched really hard by a troll monster, it's like, why?
And then Brit, it gets way worse. So you know how like they sometimes put out like tie-in materials.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they did this. This is where this is equally as. This pisses me off even more than the goddamn movie. You know why? Because they're using the new 52 design so people think this is canon to the new 52.
Not only that, but they use the new 52 um attire, but they also use the new 52 origin. And they rewrite the origin, especially in the Wonder Woman issue, and have Lois in it as if she was fighting parademons.
Yeah,
And I'm
she
like,
wasn't. She was running away. We saw this in the movie.
yeah, Lois was never fighting parademons. She never had. I think she found a gun somewhere, like some type of blaster. And I'm like, where did this come from? And of course,
Again,
you have
Britt, don't don't question it. Shh, shh, shh. Just consume. Just consume.
it's ridiculous. And then to have it where when he saves her, Diana sees, and Diana is saying how that moment she knew that Clark is supposed to be with Lois or whatever. But it's like, Diana, you two weren't even together yet. So how are you supposed to know who Lois is or him saving her? It makes no sense at all. So, but then at the end, Diana calls him her best friend, and I'm like, no, he's not your best friend, because no best friend, even if you, had that romantic relationship, and it obviously it didn't it wasn't a mutual breakup. It wasn't something, because Clark becomes very antagonistic and is just so distant and shallow, and there's no feeling, between them whatsoever. You don't just cut your feelings off like a light switch. It has to be something that's, emotionally, you know, resonance still there. And for them to just cut it off, you know, it does not make sense. And again, for Diana to be a mouthpiece here, it still does not make sense, to where, yeah, Screen Rant is already written by like AI or whatever, and whoever writes those articles, they definitely don't read the comments, and they just take whatever and make up their own BS to it. But yeah, for you to use these designs and for articles to be written as if this is what happened in the main continuity of New 52, I can't stand that.
Or YouTubers that make shorts about this, but clearly don't do their research.
Right. So this,
You know who
and
you are.
yeah, so even this, a lot of the Superman fans was like, this was unnecessary. And it was, because you are rewriting the entire animated universe to fit with this narrative that was never there.
Yeah, exactly. So then you get to, this is what they should have done. Doomed, because Doomed, you don't have to undermine Clark and Diana's relationship. You can still have Lois play a role, because she kind of does, particularly in the Brainiac portion. But if you didn't want to do that, you can make it Dark Side. Robert and I talked about that today. But you could just like adapt this where Superman turning into Doomsday, assuming Superman actually permanently turns into Doomsday, he does die. But then again, if you make this Superman Wonder Woman doomed, that's a Superman Wonder Woman movie. It builds on their relationship. And then it's like it builds on why they work so well together and the stakes, particularly the scene. You can have the scene where like she's about to behead him essentially, and she goes, "You made me promise if it got to that point, I do what was necessary."
Yeah, there was a lot of moments in um, Superman Doomed that really conveyed Clark and Diana's relationship as how far it would go for Diana to protect Clark, or go, to the edge of a sacrifice needs to be made. And
Yeah, exactly.
it really plays off of, Clark's psyche of Doomsday basically being a taunting, like he was a virus, inside Clark's mind, where his insecurities were, he was basically fighting his insecurities, you know, and dealing with them head on. And then you have Diana, where she has to make the decision, for the man that she loves versus being the warrior, or, the hero that she needs to be. So you
Exactly.
have so much to play off of, for and it's right there in your face. It's not like it's not hard to adapt these stories, right, or to adapt these relationships. But they make it hard because they just don't have that creative investment.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get to what went wrong with the DCAU is because they crazy speed up the emotional timeline. Everything is about Lois, and then it's like regressing the characters off screen again. My storytelling philosophy is that if you can't do it off screen or off panel or off page, don't do it at all.
Exactly. And as I said, that every explanation that they had, or the fact that you have to just accept it, you can't question it. And if you question it, they get mad at you. Why, as a creative, we're the consumers. We are, if you want us to follow something, we want to follow it in a natural way, in an organic way. So yeah, if you take something out and have abrupt changes, your consumer is going to question it. So why
And
are
you
you doing
wonder
that?
why all your times to preserve this stupid status quo, every time you try and do this, Britt, what happens to sales?
They plummet.
Exactly. It's almost like telling the audience what they should want actually makes them want what they actually want even more. Yeah.
Right.
And this would have worked a lot better because it's more in line with with the universe. You could still tell technically that same story, but you literally don't have to. Let me put it this way: you still have to change a few things, but it's significantly less.
Right.
Exactly, and plus, then you can establish the relationship. You could establish Hesha off screen, but whatever. You could. You don't have to do the the Brainiac invasion part. You could just do the Superman part, and eventually he just snakes it out. Or as Robert and I were talking about, what you could do. Part 1 is ends with him leaving Earth to go like get control of it and then maybe purge it. Part 2, Brainiac or Darkseid invades, and then that's the final fight where he finally purges it.
That is perfect.
Got it. And what you could do, he purges it, and then Darkseid absorbs it.
Interesting.
And then what you do, that like makes Darkseid go crazy. So that means you can take Darkseid off the board for a second because he's trying to master being taken over by Doomsday.
See, we are always rewriting DC.
It's almost like we're better writers than a lot of people at DC. I'm just saying. I mean, let's put it this way. I started off as a fan of Britt before I even knew her, so I can even tell you she's a better writer than them.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It takes you a while to
See, you always have better shade. Always.
Of course, I always have to. You know me. I gotta. But that's what you do. But Britt, I've been hyping this up. So I told Britt, so this is great. Definitely use Doom because it sets off all this stuff. You could have Diana having to like struggle with the whole "the world comes first" theme and stuff. I may be wondering, Britt, how would I do this?
How would you?
Okay, so here's my ending to the DCAMU. This is something that I've been hyping up to Britt. So what you do, the gods, instead of Darkseid, the gods unleash Doomsday to punish the mortals for adopting the Justice League as their new gods. The creature battles each of the Justice Leaguers, but he adapts to their abilities, thus becoming stronger and explaining why he could beat the crap out of, like, the A-list Justice Leaguers. Clark battles the creature to a standstill before delivering the blow, sacrificing his own life in the process. But he still takes out Doomsday. So in other words, instead of Darkseid being the motivating factor, it's the gods. Because the gods create monsters all the time. And again, this is playing off of the story that I've always wanted to see, which is the gods of old going to war with the Justice League because they're jealous. And Britt, isn't that in character with the Greek gods?
Yes.
So I'm like, yeah, definitely do that. And then what you do, this whole setup, you're setting up. Clark is trying to sum up the courage to ask Diana to marry him. Just like in the Tomasi issues of Superman and Wonder Woman, where they show him, he visits his parents' grave and does the whole thing. And it's like, I know I'll treat her right and stuff. He goes to like Hal, Barry, Bruce, and to talk about how do I do this. He even goes to like Jessica Cruz. Yes, Cruz arrives here off screen because if they're allowed to add characters off screen, so am I. And it's like, and Diana goes out for a girls' night not with Lois because no, but with like Black Canary, Vixen, all the other. Wait, Mira's on the Justice League. Mira, she's with Mira. They go swimming, and then we have that literal scene of Superman and Wonder Woman when Mira and Diana are swimming, and then they're talking about how much Diana loves Clark. So you do that. Then the whole battle starts. And then the Justice League are like beaten to a pulp. Superman has to step up. We get my scene earlier where Diana leans in and says, "Punch him extra hard for me." And then he goes off and fights Doomsday. And then he obviously gets killed. So then we get to Reign of Supermen. I modify this story quite a bit. All right. So Reign, following the death, Diana throws herself into her duties as Wonder Woman to take her mind off of Cal's death, particularly after she finds out that he was going to propose to her. So 4 new Supermen show up, and Wonder Woman battles each and every one of them to make sure that they're going to adhere to Cal's legacy. I'm going to modify Connor Kent quite a bit for this. So instead of him being a mixture of Clark and Lex's DNA, he's a hybrid of Cal and Diana's DNA as a means of saying F you to the people that think this is about eugenics. Because Lex is like, I'm going to create the ultimate, like, she's sending me like 20 of these. Jesus. So it's Diana essentially fighting. Diana finds out that, like, so technically Connor is her son. So she has to, like, kind of raise him, but she frees him from Lex, because Lex's idea was like, I'm going to create the ultimate life form and merge it with the two most powerful creature, with the two most powerful, like, in Lex's mind, aliens. So Diana fights Cyborg Superman during the battle, kind of like where Lois fought Cyborg in that movie. Diana fights him instead, tears the S from his chest, and says, I will not have you sully the symbol of my love, not as long as I draw breath. This is me taking that I will not that American flag line from Tom King's Wonder Woman and co-opting it, because that's what I do. And then Diana essentially, like, and then it ends with Lex is put in jail for everything he facilitated, and then what happens is Diana sees embedded beneath the S of Cyborg Superman is the name of Veronica Cale's company. And it turns out Veronica Cale's behind this. I'm excluding Darkseid from this, because if, as far as I'm concerned, he's struggling with turning into Doomsday. I'm adopting that. And Connors basically says, so what's going to happen to me now? And Diana says, I don't know, but if you want, I'm technically your mother, and that means I'm not going to abandon you. So she takes in Connor. So then we get the Wonder Woman movie. Wonder Woman, Love of an Amazon. Diana receives a vision from Aphrodite, indicating that Cal is alive and held prisoner in Tartarus. Diana gathers Connor, Donna, Cassie, and Silver Swan to go to the underworld and retrieve Superman. Yes, I'm doing something that DC doesn't have the balls to do, and have Diana team up with Silver Swan. And instead of having it be like a permanent suit, I'm making it be like a Batwing / Steel. What it is, Vanessa goes to Steel and says, I need to help Diana. So can you make me a suit of armor? So the Silver Swan suit, it's not like surgically implanted into her. It's like a mech suit that she's inside. It still looks the same, but it's not like embedded. She can leave it, in other words. So they travel throughout a journey. So to adapt Hush, like they wanted to do, it's an homage to all these different eras of Diana's history that we didn't get to see, such as, like, we can even homage, like, Artemis. They run into Artemis, and Artemis points them to where they need to go. They return to Themyscira and travel through Doom's doorway. And it's like Connor, so because men can't, like, step foot in Themyscira, Connor's, like, hovering 2 feet above the ground at all times. And then Hippolyta goes, what are you doing? And then Connor goes, I don't know the rules. Can I land? I don't know. Are you going to stab me? And she goes, just get down, grandson. So next, what you have is when they find him emaciated and discover it was a plot not by the gods, but by the Titan Kronos. So Kronos was influencing the gods. So the gods are relatively blameless in this. And it's so the Titan is trying to return. So Apollo sacrifices himself and, like, pours all of his solar energy into Cal. Britt, you know I had to homage this scene. And then Clark powers up, and Clark and Diana and their technically son Connor beat the crap out of Kronos. And then Diana says, Kronos, your mistake was interfering in my life and targeting my friends and love. You will learn that there's no wrath more intense than a provoked Amazon. And then they defeat Kronos, and Diana beheads Kronos. And then it ends with Clark getting down on one knee, and then Diana saying, what are you doing? And then Clark goes, what I was trying to get the courage to do. And then he proposes to her. And that's the last shot of the movie. He proposes to her. So continuing then. And you may be wondering, Jared, how does this end? Instead of a grim, dark future, this ends. I don't know why it took out my title, but it's PowerPoint. It's basically Kingdom Come. So the final DCAU movie, AMU movie, serves as a wrap up. And it shows the universe progress as Clark and Diana get married. And then you see they mentor they still serve in the Justice League. They mentor the next generation of Leaguers. And then it ends with Cal going, "Thank you for saving me, Diana." And then Diana says, "Thank you for being mine and for never giving up on us." Fade to black.
Bye.
I have 18 crying cat gifs. This had the effect I knew it would.
Good Lord, that was a very good pitch. That was a very
And
good.
by the way, if it wasn't on the slide, that was an ad lib.
Wow, that was really good. Yes.
Yeah, that's what you do.
Perfect
So
movie.
you still technically do these movies, but you adapt the plot so it's organic.
Yes, that makes so much sense. And it's so interesting. But yeah, DC does not have that creative juice.
Yeah, and then actually the last shot of the movie, it's a still image of this right here.
I just love that.
Yeah, that's such a good image. And it's Connor being a big brother. Yeah, that was my idea because I'm I could just do the Lex DNA thing, but I'm what if Lex actually tried to create the ultimate life form? That's an interesting way to, and so Lex. So it's because it's we can do the scene where it's revealed that Clark and Diana are together. We can do that whole freak out scene in Superman Wonder Woman where he goes, I can't believe we didn't plan for this, but then he goes, I can
Wait a
use
minute.
this.
Exactly. And that does counter the whole thing about Clark and Diana being together as eugenics when you have Lex that sees that and Clark and Diana are basically no,
It's not eugenics, brother. It's not eugenics.
Right.
Yeah. And so, that's essentially the way they could have still done those movies and not have to change anything and respect Diana. And then you could end it not on a grim, dark note, just end it on a more hopeful note. That's how you actually do this.
Right.
And again, I'm an amateur and I came up with this in 20 minutes. Just give me a day and I can give you an entire cinematic universe.
I mean, we do have
You and I do that all the time.
right.
Let me put it this way. You know how the Shelterverse exploded? It was really supposed to be a 4-chapter thing. But then it's one day I was like, okay, so I have an idea. If you want to do a sequel, here's what we could do. And then if we want to do a sequel after that, and then it's Odyssey started as
a one-shot.
No. You know where I got the idea for Odyssey, Britt? I was watching the cutscenes for God of War. And the newer one with Atreus and Kratos going on that journey. And I was like, how can we do that with Diana? And then you came up with that idea. And I'm then I came up with a character in that. And that's how it exploded into what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to the point, Britt and I did the entire episode, we have a multiverse in plan. But if you give me if you give us time, we could give you all on screen can be yours. If you just call if you just DM the Twitter account below. Anyway, but instead we got James Tucker who wanted to adopt Action Comics 600 out of context. And by even Robert was no.
Yes, this is, I mean, actually, 600, Clark and Diana are, like I said, there's this rush, this infatuation, yes. Just how it started with New 52 of excited to meet someone that might be similar, to you. That is what people are attracted to. Someone who has, you have a commonness with. And yeah, and that is how a relationship works for any detractors, because for some reason, Clark and Diana having things in common means that they're too similar to be together, which that never makes sense. Or even when they say that they look alike. And when you know a relationship or the reality of relationships and social media and everything, people say that like when when you've been together for so long, you adapt or you adopt each other's mannerisms or you start to look alike. And for some reason, people actually love that. They actually say it's kind of like you are two kindred spirits, twin flames and stuff like that. That's basically what that goes into. So, yeah, everything basically that's projected as negative upon Clark and Diana's relationship actually in reality is very positive. So, you know, their development within post crisis of having dreams about each other, of being curious about each other, and then, yeah, the awkwardness because John Byrne had to make something weird. But the fact that Perez was building something so innocent, and even if it didn't work out, it's still the fact that they decided to become friends and learn of each other first. And then that infatuation and curiosity really turned into a genuine love and a bond. So now they have the groundwork of having a romance.
By
And
the
that
way,
makes
I'm
sense.
I'm gonna take this. This is in my universe, and what I do is I adapt this up to the breakup. That way, I can lull these creatives into a false sense of security to make them think I'm gonna adapt that, and then I just cut off right there. How do you
Um,
like it?
yeah, so
You could say I immortal beloveded it.
oh my God.
I'm a petty a-hole, but you know what? Proud of it.
So so within this, yeah, the out of context part is that this is they're not together at all. They are just starting out first date and it ends awkwardly. So is in Clark, um he is insecure, get cold feet because he feels like he's not enough for Diana. He basically puts her on a pedestal in a sense. So and Diana, she's new to the world still. So she prayed naked, for understanding of her feelings
What you
for
don't
Clark.
know is that Clark just happens to be hovering just out of sight,
Oh
and he's
my
using his
God.
supervision. He's like, "Oh, hello." I'm just
Oh
kidding, of
my
course.
God. Oh my God. So you have these little moments where they aren't understanding those feelings, and it's coming so fast. So they have to build that understanding. And it scares them, for that moment. So they have to pump the brakes, in this. And like I said, within post crisis, you see that love builds slowly, and that's what we love about them in post crisis when it was actually written in a genuine way. Because and yeah, you have that soap opera drama, but you rooted for them though, you know. So yeah, the way James Tucker wanted to do it was very mean spirited. You have Clark and Diana already developing a relationship within the past three movies. They obviously have been together for quite some time. Maybe even it seemed like they were together for probably the 4 years or the
Hmm.
5 years of New 52.
Hmm.
So if you have them together 5 years within your animated series, um, or so, however long, how can you adapt Action Comic 600 to they broke up in that sense that now it's awkward when there's no way you can adapt that to be the same thing, so no, it just really doesn't make sense of how hell-bent on ruining a relationship and using Action Comic 600 to continue on with this Clark and Diana's relationship doesn't work when you know
Also, why would Clark? Wow, here's the problem with this issue. Why does Clark just all of a sudden kiss her like that?
well, it was actually a bait and switch of I think it was Superman 5. Oh, it's a previous issue before this when they meet and they kiss. And the way the kiss is drawn there is very mutual. But then here, it seemed like Diana is very surprised by it. And it again, it's like a rush. Both of them have a rush, especially with Clark. And he just kisses her. And it again, it scares her. It's not that she doesn't like him or anything like that. It just she does not know how to place her feelings just yet.
Well, because she was relatively young at the time, so that does actually work well.
Exactly.
So, you know what else is like really annoying, Britt? This whole Cal and Clark debate where people try and make it like Diana calls him Cal because she's trying to ignore his human side. And I go, that is not based in reality at all.
Exactly.
First off, she calls him both. Any amount of surface level reading establishes that. And second off, like you say, Britt, she calls him Cal because that's ultimately who he is. But here's the thing: the way I kind of take it is she calls him Cal when they're in private because she can. But obviously, when like say she comes to see him at the Daily Planet, she's not going to go, "Oh hey, Kal-El."
Exactly. And the thing is, this is Superman is still a Moses allegory. So you have him, he learns of his birthright. He learns of his true nature, his true heritage. And he is supposed to take that and use it as a guidance. Even if he is, has gone by another identity, that is not your true identity. And of course, yeah, he's he grew up or was raised as Clark. He's pretending to be this regular human boy, but who he really is an alien from a different planet, and he has powers beyond belief. Um, and he has the Kents are not his biological parents. Yes, blood and um, that does not truly matter when you have that love from someone, that your parents, adoptive parents. But at the same time, that's still like there's still a difference. He can pass, but say if anyone else was adopted, um, and has a different skin tone, you can't hide your skin tone. But
Mm.
he can hide himself to blend in or to be, like I said, pretending. And that's another thing that we loved about Throne of Atlantis or Clark's characterization in the earlier animation, because he said it's not about being human, like trying to pretend to be something that you're not. It's blending in basically with the world of how everyone is different. You have different backgrounds, different ages, different ethnicities, different orientations. All of us are blending in to create the world that it is. So for that to be projected or deemed as something bad, that Clark and Diana's relationship celebrates that type of uniqueness, is kind of like, okay, so in reality of the world, are we not supposed to celebrate our uniqueness? Are we not supposed to have respect and honor and celebrate our heritage? You know, why do they have certain holidays or special days or where they celebrate culture?
Exactly.
If it's something that's supposed to be bad, why is that? Why is it that you are aware that adoptees, once they grow become of age and they understand that they were adopted, some adoptees, they want to know their family, whether it is something tragic that happened or if they were given up, they still want to know why, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And it's like it's a very deeply flawed thing because it's completely oversimplifies this because it's like, but it does kind of because here's the thing. I barely, if ever, as far as I know, Lois doesn't call him Cal either. So am I allowed to flip the argument there with?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm like, wait a minute, because if Lois said to, at least Diana calls them both literally all the time.
Exactly.
If going by your own logic, not you, Britt, but some other people, going by
Right.
your logic, that means that Lois doesn't respect his Kryptonian heritage. That's true, but still.
Exactly. Lois, she has never, you know, the only thing, the furthest that Lois has ever cared about their Kryptonian heritage was just to get a story. I mean, she doesn't even care for it, even for John. We have never seen Lois actually um, study anything of Krypton.
Well,
And the
even in the Warworld saga, when Lois is studying about Kryptonian history, it's so she can write a book about it.
that and it's, I mean, that didn't go anywhere. It and
Yeah.
honestly, it just feels like um it honestly just feels like Kennedy wanted to Lois to do something, like to have some type of relevancy, but it didn't go anywhere. It didn't do anything. So it really didn't matter. And how are you studying if you were supposed to be married for however long? How are you just now studying?
Where Diana learned the whole frickin' language.
Yes, that again, you know, once you analyze this and look deeply into it, you
It all
see
falls apart real
it all
fast.
exactly.
Again, it's like a sweater made by someone that's never made a sweater before.
Right.
So,
And
speaking of a crappy sweater, hollowing the hollow replacement. There you go.
yeah, so this Lois does not know of Superman. And within this, when you see her, Clark is taking her to Star Labs to again, she's writing and taking notes on him, but it's not a genuine of knowing him as Superman, as a person. It's just her trying to take notes for a story. So I don't the way they try to romanticize this relationship as is something that's so enduring, that is something that um again Lois knows him. Lois is she understands him. Again, if they are married for however long and writers are saying, oh, now that she has power, she can understand him. She can, see the world as he sees it. When you have Diana, that she already sees the world as he sees it. They have a different perspective because of their upbringing, but at the same time, there's still a connection to it. They have that true yin and yang connection. The the opposite thing of the hero or the superpowered person and the civilian, that is so you will have different worldviews. You won't have anything in common. And to say, oh, because they're both reporters, they're unethical. And Lois, being the reporter that she is, again, she's getting the source of things from Superman. That doesn't count. Diana, she works to, if going with the ambassador role, she works to help the lives of women and children, and she loves culture and everything like that. She's celebrating life itself, and that is something that Clark does too. You know,
Speaking of
um,
Diana, so this piece of work. Oh my
so
god.
yes,
I,
so
I had some, it's kind of funny, Brett. I recently went through a sort of a transformation, if you will, because I'm going through and like rereading a bunch of old Wonder Woman content in the aftermath of Tom King's BSery. So I rewatched this, and I rewatched 2009. And I will say, this made me love 2009. Because yes, 2009 has its issues. It's not this.
Really?
Because 2009 is way better. Yes, it has Steve Trevor like talking about Diana's boobs and stuff and trying to drug her and stuff, but ignoring that, it keeps more to Diana as opposed, because Diana in that movie is not stuck on Steve Trevor. In this, she is. They don't undermine Diana for Steve Trevor. It has some of the best soundtrack I have ever listened to in a superhero movie is in 2009. And honestly, the animation looked a lot better than this.
Well, I mean, if you want to take the lesser of the two evils, then yeah.
Yeah, of the two, 2009 is the one I'm going to rewatch more than this.
Right. And again, this one is very forgettable.
Yeah, and I'm like, so it's doing the Perez book again. You realize that, or it's combining Perez and Eye of the Gorgon. Neither of those had her in a relationship with Steve.
Right. In Perez, she was infatuated or, falling for Clark. And Gloria, she wasn't with anyone. It was her just being independent. And I mean, to take that story, especially because it was supposed to be like a public fight, so they really did take the stakes out of it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Speaking of relationship that has no stakes, it's funny. It's funny how that works, isn't it? It's really funny. And the other thing that screwed up was the mother-daughter stuff. As you said earlier about like Hippolyta, about Diana having to fight Hippolyta. I'm like, I get it if like Hippolyta didn't want her daughter to go. 2017 movie did this way better.
Hippolyta and Diana would never fight. If anything, yeah, they would have disagreements, and it would be mostly of like Hippolyta, she's traumatized from, centuries of,
Britt, this is where Tom King got the inspiration for Diana punching Hippolyta.
well, it, hmm.
I love that. I love how Britt started like, well,
It's yeah, it's something.
That goes in the back of the omnibus for Tom King's Wonder Woman. It's something.
And yeah, I mean, I guess you can say that the way he, or the lack of writing the mother and daughter dynamics in his run right now, yeah, is definitely inspiration from this, because the way they butchered the relationships, it really does not make any sense, and especially when you don't even have the drama to really just go with it. Hippolyta, she's overprotective in a sense. She's not sheltered, is, well, yeah, she did shelter Diana, and only out of love, because of everything that she's gone through. Diana is her gift. Tom King is she's her miracle, and because she created Diana out of like pureness, innocence, and true motherly love. And she doesn't want Diana to be tainted, by the corruption of man's world. So yeah, she's going to have this sternness, to her, but she's still going to respect Diana though. She still will let her um go on her own journey and follow the path that she may want. But to make Hippolyta cold hearted or whatever, and basically like, you have to fight me in order to get off the island. No, no way. Hippolyta would never raise a sword to Diana. She would never do anything like that. And again, for you to just totally screw up what Perez built, and then and with Medusa, it, yeah, no wonder no one cared for this movie, and it, you know, got the bad reviews that it did. And also, I mean, I'm sorry, but if you are going to adapt beloved stories, adapt them properly and adapt them with quality.
It's not that hard. And then the one animated movie where you include Vanessa and Julia, we went through that. Oh, oh,
Yes.
like, it's like this has never been Vanessa's relationship, like antagonist to like Diana, and then you get the. Isn't it kind of funny how Steve Trevor is mostly at the center of all of people's criticisms of Wonder Woman movies, like all of them?
Right. It's so funny that even in that picture, Steve looks a lot older and Diana looks like a little girl. Like,
She looks like his daughter.
yeah, it's kind of awkward, but it also, I mean, it's a very accurate image to the way Diana is written. Very childish for Steve to be, you know, whatever he is to her. And again, the fact that he had this sort of possessive type attitude towards her, this controlling, way that she had to do what he says and stuff like that, to write, him that way, and to have her try to be in a relationship with him afterwards is just so like, where is the agency? Where is Diana's like, you just do not care. You just all first it was the synergy for DCEU, but also you just have no respect for Diana because Steve is very much the default rebound for and wanting to push him as Diana's Lois or whatever, which still, why would you want to be a Lois? Um, but he's not. He, for 30 plus years, he was just this supporting character that played the role as the big brother figure, or, bordering a father figure for Diana. He literally calls Diana little sister. So that
Mm-hmm.
makes it even more awkward when you're trying to have him as the love interest, and he's written as that older figure type way, the way he talks to Diana, the way their relationship is very much that, like an older man with a younger woman. And it's just so awkward and weird to me.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get the undermining of female agency again. It's like Julian Di- Julia hates Vanessa hates Diana, and then Diana is like halfway through the movie, Julia plays zero role, and then Hippolyta is much too aggressive. The Amazons are like extremely distrusting, and it's like they went through the Perez book and said we can do better, like
So it's
King.
definitely like, yeah, let's say so it's basically like King.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much that, and it's sad because Wonder Woman gets so few animated movies. In fact, she's only gotten two.
And it's just no agency. I mean, no.
The first one she had agency.
Well, I would say that, yeah, if you didn't have Steve, and then at the end, for her to be obligated to be with Steve, is like, okay, how are you rewarding him as a character? And obviously, he had no type of actual development either of him wanting to drug Diana or get her drunk. Um, and he was basically written like Tom Treasure.
Yeah, exactly. Because Gail Simone was one of the writers on the movie. Let's not forget about that. So, all right, so Britt. So when we were talking about, because we're gonna talk about Apocalypse War, so I wanted to pick the right image. I literally found this. Figured this was the appropriate image.
I mean, he is like a demon devil thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because and then remember, the only thing that can snap him out of this is Lois.
I mean, that is basically how DC sees Superman. He's very much the demon spawn monster that needs Lois to have him unleash.
And then again, it's like, then you get to the actual movie, and he wants to, like, he goes, no, we're gonna murder Darkseid.
This is so stupid because he, like, no plan, no one, I don't even think um
Someone
anyone,
asked him,
like,
I think it's Constantine that says, what if this is a trap?
but he just, like, not even Batman questions it. I'm like, so you're just gonna go along with it?
Even in like the other animated movies, like pre Tommowverse, even the DCAU, Batman's like, yeah, dude, you're operating off of emotion. This is a bad idea.
Right. So you just start this movie off with Superman just being angry and basically gathering everyone to be, you know, basically sitting ducks. And you see them murdered, slaughtered, and everything, you know, basically whatever Tucker and the crew could think of to just torment these iterations of these characters. And then you have Superman when the world basically burns down, all he cares about still is Lois. And some way, some at some point in here, he marries her. It's like, okay, so the world goes to hell and you all you care about is marrying Lois. Like, wow. Somewhere in between there. And then whatever happens, I don't remember the movie as a whole, but whatever happens, you go back to Apokalypse and you see everyone that's half alive and really
Yeah.
no emotion shown, especially with Diana, because that was, if you want to play off that they're now best friends or whatever, he doesn't even have any type of emotional any reaction to her being turned into a fury. Yeah, he says, "Oh, Diana, whatever. I'm sorry that happened to you," but it sounds so empty, and so. But his only reaction to someone dying is Lois.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then you get to Diana, who was literally turned into a monster.
So yeah, even Diana, even she doesn't interject when he is going on the rant before they go into the slaughterhouse. She's just mute. She's just standing there with him, basically just taking orders, and that's it. So she doesn't have any type of significant role. Even at the end, when she's right there, she puts her hand on his shoulder or whatever. But it's like, why? Why would you have her just continued as like this support for Clark, who has treated her in such a antagonizing way?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like she murders like Etrigan the demon in this, and it's it's just it's cool because I've always felt it would be cool in Elseworld story if Diana became a Fury, but not like this. Come on.
Right.
And then it's like so emotional. Diana, I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry this happened to any of you. And then, oh god, Lois is held up while everyone else. By the way, that like image of Mira screaming, that was me.
Yeah. So you have all of these powerful women, murdered and turned into furies. But then Lois is the one with like the uh forced into to basically the center and the ultimate, heroic sacrifice. Um but throughout this whole time, she really has not had any impactful significance, even in Death of Superman. Like Robert said, how all of us has said, even within the animated movie, the only reason she was relevant is because Clark is all of a sudden in love with her and wants to tell his secret to her, his secret identity. But even that was so immature, so abrupt. It's nothing to truly invest in unless you are a Lois fan. And then in Reign of Superman, again, you're jumping the shark for her. You're making her more than what she is, and using the Justice League and everyone else again as a prop up. You have to nerf them. Um you have to use them as mouthpieces, and that was it. So that's Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman. And then you have, even in Hush, Catwoman puts Lois on top of a roof, pushes her in order for Superman to um, break out of Poison Ivy's possession.
And unfortunately, Superman catches her.
And yeah, he has to. So that's all she is. And again, Superman is like a rabid dog that needs to be on a leash, and Lois is the one that's holding the leash, and it's ridiculous. And yeah, it's truly ridiculous with that.
Exactly.
And just with this whole like movie verse, now that we've talked about it throughout,
Well, we're not done yet. We got one more slide of it.
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, for now, I'm glad that I did not, like I said, I was not going to watch these movies,
Well, I know what you're doing for April Fools next year.
Absolutely not.
Too late. Nope.
No,
We get to
no.
pick it. We get to pick it. Robert and I will make you positive review Death of Superman.
But I thought I was already doing God's whom God's destroy.
No, but you remember the rules. It's a movie and a comic. That's silence. That silence is all I need. I'm just kidding, Britt. I'm just kidding, Britt. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm kidding. Maybe I'm not. Whatever.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, it's like, and then all this like ends with like the most downer note ever, and I'm like, then somehow, this is the thing. I'm just gonna speed through this slide because we've already talked about it, but somehow we go from this to one of the best portrayals of Superman and Wonder Woman in animation. How does this happen?
Because Jim Craig actually loved Diana and was a fan of Wonder Woman. That's how.
That's clearly.
Yes. The fact that we were vindicated like right after all of this hell and torture
That's
of
why I didn't believe
DCAMU.
it when Taladia told me that they're together. I go, no, there's no way. Even Britt was like, there's no way they do this. And we're like, oh my
Exactly.
God.
Right. I mean, yeah, we had you would think that when they announced Tommowverse and they were talking about the movies and Man of Tomorrow, they like Superman fans, some of them swore it would be a Rebirth adaptation, and or that it would be kind of like a flashback, and John would be um, the Man of Tomorrow. And then when you see,
A Superboy was the Man of Tomorrow.
well, and when you see that it's Clark as a young, and it's kind of like, okay, you restart this verse to be them younger yet again. Yeah, it's very much cheap animation because they slashed the budget, but you're starting over with younger versions, like I said, yet again. And it's kind of like you had that though. You had these younger versions that you could have um let flourish, but yet you didn't. You sped through all development, uh the lack of development that was done off screen, and then you had to kill the verse. So here, yeah, you expected to have something a little different. So with Man of Tomorrow, um, Lois and Clark, they weren't together. Like there was no indication of them together whatsoever. But yeah, when you get to Crisis, though, um, and Craig says this, he's like he wanted to have show the differences within the Earths. So that is why even with Earth One, Wonder Woman mentioned, she wasn't featured because he wanted to show Earth One's Superboy with Lois, even though that didn't even have development. But you had Earth Two, Clark and Diana, that basically started having their development within um, the JSA movie because, of course, they had that Diana calling him Shakespeare, which honestly is very much a compliment, even though he hated it in a sense. It, you know, with that bantering, it's still the fact that it was a compliment to his writing. Um, and then at the end, she basically forgot that Steve was basically dying. And especially with seeing Clark, in the uniform and how he was uh, on a slide giving her a compliment and giving her basically um, kudos that she's the one that inspired him to put on the suit and help them.
Exactly. And again, it goes on to the idea of the mutual respect that they both had from the start. And again, this is like the anti DCAMU AMU because it's like even when you get to like Crisis, the ending, it's like and I know Britt had her issues with this
I did.
when this until I reminded her because that's the beauty of Britt and my partnership. I said, yeah, but remember, the world always comes first.
Right. Even in War World, when we saw, I don't know your reaction. You never told me your reaction when with seeing the trailer at first.
As soon
And
as I saw the hand on the chest on the S shield, I was like, "Wait a minute here!"
right, and then exactly. So
And then
we
like
all had the
by
same.
Clark, I'm like, "See, here's the thing. I suspected, but here's the problem. DC has burned me way too many times, so I was like,
Exactly.
do I want to get hyped up for this? But then I kept expecting. Literally, Britt and I, when we were covering these movies, we're like, okay, when's the shoe gonna drop? It's like when we were watching the DC documentary and they were singing the praises of the new 52. We were both like, okay, 3, 2, it doesn't happen.
Right, right. So, in War World, you have those little moments where she puts her hand on the shield
Calls him
or
Mike Clark.
says my Clark, and then it's also the scene where Superboy basically says, you know, something about she said that she was tied up in the lasso, and he says, well, I wouldn't think that you would be tied up in the lasso. See, something like that. It's
Or
kind of
like
like,
when she puts on her armor for the first time, and she goes, "I like it," and then Clark goes, "Me too."
yeah. So those little moments, again, that's all we ask for, really, is because Clark and Diana's relationship should be so effortless. It's something that, yeah, you have the buildup, of course, but their moments should be very simple, but have that impact. It's not something that's so try hard. It's not something that should be expected, and like the traditional relationships are. And yeah, it's not going to be written as shallow either. It's going to be something written very unique and very just them. Um,
Exactly.
and then when we go to Crisis, again, Lois and Clark are together by default, only because you see Earth 2, Clark and Diana together. And even in Earth 2, when he says that he was married to Lois, honestly, it was all done off screen. So why
It
are
was like
we?
he was saying, "Before you fanboys freak out, he was married to Lois. She died," and
But
then
honestly, like that wasn't even. It was kind of like that he was trying to protect himself from getting harassed by Chloe's fans. But it's kind of like, does it matter that she existed? Because this is 1940s Superman. So it's kind of like, why Lois wasn't in the JSA movie, so whether she existed or not really did not matter. Um,
Well, again, Lois really doesn't matter. We know this, Britt.
sure.
So,
Um,
so
so,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, so I think also because they wanted to adapt Kingdom Come here too.
Hmm.
So I feel like if they were going to try to adapt Kingdom Come n- as a tie-in to the Tommowverse with the Earth 2 versions, then I could see, okay, maybe a off-screen, you know, um, s- scene that made sense for to bring up, Lois basically unalive. But just to bring that up to sort of uh, coddle the Close fans that really do not care anyway. They just want to have their way. It was unnecessary. And
Oh
also,
yeah,
I mean, you also see Superboy. Again, he does not have a relationship with his Lois anyway, so why does it matter?
exactly. It matters to these people because nostalgia, Britt. That's the thesis of this episode. So then, okay, Britt, we made it. We're done talking about the DC animated movie universe. There's no way we have anything more negative to talk about. So Absolute Superman. So we're gonna start with Absolute Superman. The freaking awesome, like the helmet and everything. Him kicking. I predict when Talati and I were talking about issue 7, and we saw Brainiac. I didn't. This didn't click when you and I talked about it. I knew they were gonna turn Christopher Smith into. I saw this. I'm like, they're gonna turn him into Metallo, and they did.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting, very actiony um issue. I I'm still getting used to the art.
Mm-hmm.
I love the cape. I love Absolute Superman design. That pretty much fits with this art, but it's something that's a little stiff, you know. Um, I love that Cal, he basically has no time for Lois. Like he does not care for her
He's like,
whatsoever.
see ya.
Yeah, he does not want anything to do with her. I just hope that Aaron doesn't like do a 180 yet again, like they normally do, and have him all of a sudden caring for Lois in that romantic type sense. Because again, these are supposed to be Elseworlds. They're supposed to be new iterations and different from main continuity. Stop doing the same thing. It does become predictable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of same, well, actually, this following thing is unpredictable, but for the wrong ways. Okay, so Diana's demon spawn. So, by the way, no one talked about this on Twitter. So I was gonna do a trending day about this, but then Britt and a few other people in the hashtag group chat told me, you know what? Let's make it so no one talks about this. And it's kind of funny. Whenever Tom King's Wonder Woman issues come out anyway, only we are the ones that talk about it. So we were like, okay, so let's try this. It was dead silent. So that's the first part. Second off, this is literally the Steve issue because he even like takes the Fates hostage. What? And it's like, so you're
Yeah,
telling me
yeah.
Diana's alive, but then she's not hanging out with her daughter?
No, because Diana's depressed. She's depressed and only cares about Steve. That is the only
And
way.
Mean Trinity is back.
Yeah, the first to take away the meaning of Wonder Woman and to force a man at the center, which is Steve, Blandman. And you take away the importance of the mother and daughter relationship. You have Hippolyta and Diana. You have Julia and Vanessa. You have Cassie and Helena. All these other relationships that truly matter. And the sole focus is mother and daughter. Even um, Diana and Philippus, Philippus. Uh, and you can say even Diana and Hesha, because Hesha was still a older Amazon, or a guide for Diana. you know. So the main focus is always a mother and daughter relationship. And for King to have an interview so egotistical and like say Trinity was created for the Super Sons to have a little sister, and then to say that this book is about fathers and daughters, and then to read it and have this girl say, "Oh, I've been traumatized because I don't have a daddy," and to only care about that, but yet as an Amazon, all of these Amazon women, Diana, they have been tortured by men, you know, and this is to show that, yeah, fathers are not truly needed because they still become the women that they are supposed to be. Because a woman is supposed to look up to her mother. Yeah, you have a father to show if you are dating a man and looking for a husband or whatever like that. And so you want to have that respect to see, to show that influence. But at the same time, you can have that influence from a man, you know, it doesn't have to be romantic. It can be from someone that you just meet or whatever like that, like Diana has. But she did not have a father. So it should not be important to Trinity. But yet what Brittany said was that Trinity is a product of basically, you know, man's world, which is the patriarchal world. So you are obligated to have a mother and father. And then you have Tom King, who feels like you basically have to go into this traditional conservative nuclear family. And he said that when he said that he was challenging himself or felt like
Perez was
Perez was
challenging himself.
challenging
Is
him.
Perez in the room with us right now, Brian?
he I truly believe that he skimmed through some of Perez's like issues, saw because he has this
Or maybe he was
self-assertion
just
of
lying.
could have, but
The other thing, by the way, Britt, that's downright offensive. They make a joke of Pariah's trauma in this because Pariah is the being who's constantly arriving at worlds and watching them be like destroyed, and then they make a joke about it.
yeah, I mean, King jokes about trauma all the time. You know, he
Remember
makes
when he joked about torturing people in the CIA?
right. And to have this book titled Daughter of Wonder Woman, yet Diana is not in this book at all. The only time you see Diana is with this statue of her being like a trophy for Steve. That's it. And she no significance whatsoever. Apparently, yeah, the Trinity, she has trauma, Diana has trauma, and the only way to make Trinity happy and Diana happy is to have Steve. And again, you are centering Wonder Woman around a man that clearly he really did not have any significance for Diana for a very, very long time. So to try to force this because King want his own self-insertion, you know, with being a military man, and he feels like, oh, me and Steve are still are the same, being within the military. Yeah, no. And like I said earlier, this is just propping up that male fantasy that every if it seems like every writer is so like drawn to when they write Diana is that she has to be a prop up or a mouthpiece for other characters, even in her own book.
Exactly. Speaking of Diana, we got a preview of the upcoming Wonder Woman issue. There will be a trending day for. By the way, another issue without Sampere?
Well, this being the prelude, one more thing about Trinity, I would say that that's also, along with the mother and daughters, that's also very tone deaf and offensive to
Mm-hmm.
single mothers,
Ah, yes.
because mothers, I grew up in a single parent household with my mother, and she very strong. You know, she is. I mean, I wouldn't be obviously who I am if it wasn't for my mother.
Well, she must
So
be really special if she raised you, Britt.
yes, she is. So for King to write this in a way that mothers can't not only take care of their children, but also take care of a daughter, and she needs a father to function. Yeah, I that offended me. So I just I'm glad that, no one talked about this book. I'm glad that it
Like no one talked about it, and it didn't make the top the top books of the week, surprising no one. And by the way, your boy has an ICV2 Pro account, so I will be tracking the top 200 sales for this and Wonder Woman. And oh boy, is this gonna be fun!
right. So we will see that, and it clearly just sends that message that this is not a Wonder Woman story. That we collectively, no matter whether you have different opinions about shipping or the characterization of Diana, it's still the fact that collectively the fans are in agreement of not taking, Trinity nor Steve. That
I
is,
love it. I love it.
yeah, that says
This
a
is the
lot.
greatest thing. And actually, this is going to be Tom King's legacy on the book. You made people hate I almost said hate Tom King. You did that too. You made people hate Steve Trevor. Great, bro.
Right.
So
Well,
anyway, so
mhm.
speaking of hating Steve Trevor, so we got the preview. And I know it's the prelude, but again, I don't. This is the thing where I think that I've long said the Mouse Man is going to be the last arc of his run, or like the less shortened arc, because based upon this, I don't see it selling well. And this doesn't have a character like Batman to draw you in. And remember, issue 2 was out of the top of that Batman thing was out of the top 50.
Right. So in this preview, it starts off with Steve, of course, revolving around Steve, and Diana being a plot device in her own story. But Steve, and it's also in the perspective of Steve, and he um very much again written as a male fantasy. He had a night with Diana, and he's happy. Well, at first he's happy about it, but then he sees that Diana's gone. She's doing her job. So he obviously does not like that. He feels like she should have stayed and for them to have coffee and breakfast
Like G. Willow Wilson, when he's like, "You don't spend enough time with
time with
me."
me. Exactly. And so he's talking to himself and basically saying, oh, you're Wonder Woman and I'm basically he's nothing. And he isn't.
That's true.
Steve, yeah, Steve is not anything truly special. And with how King is writing him or whatever, it does not justify Diana being romantically involved with him. He does nothing for her. To say that, oh, he's just a simple guy, he's a good guy. No, he isn't. He isn't, because he's manipulative and he's whiny and wants he he is, like I said, a lot of these traditional relationships, especially Lois and Steve, they are the projections of what people think Clark and Diana's relationship is. You are reducing both of them within these relationships, especially Diana, now that we see how King is doing whatever he's doing. And with
Exactly.
the whole refocus on it being Steve, you are glorifying just every everything that is anti Wonder Woman. And just all of this is so irritating. And the childish dialogue of Steve wanting to shoot a mouse. And first of all, what is a human pistol going to do to
I
a
guess a
giant
giant
mouse?
ass mouse that is giving Diana trouble.
Yeah,
It all this is Steve going, "I can help too."
yeah. But yet I just you're not showing any type of significance of why he matters at all. The only thing that um, King pretty much came up with, basically just how he came up with Trinity, was, oh, because he's traditional, because Batman and Catwoman, Superman and Lois, so it has to be Wonder Woman and Steve. That's it. But it's kind of like that is not enough. You know, we as readers, we want to be invested. Yeah, there are some traditional fans who take that as default. They love the basics, but they are the
Exactly.
ones who limit the characters, and they are the ones that are pretty much the reason why DC is basically in the horrible state that they're in now. But fans who actually want the challenge will challenge you and are the audience that can save you, which is us. But yeah, it's honestly, I can't wait for this run to be over with. It's not going to
It's
matter,
not gonna last,
you know,
Britt. It's not gonna. There's no way this one lasts.
if
He's certainly
Trinity
not getting 100 issues.
with Trinity probably flopping out of the, you know,
Hmm.
out of the top 100.
It's like everything this man has done to Wonder Woman has been a failure.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that if Trinity flops, then yeah, this run will probably be over by the end of the
And then
Massman
again,
issue.
I'll do a tweet and I'll tag Tom King and go, "Oh, you mean you're not getting 100 issues? Oh, so sad."
No way.
I guess you shouldn't have failed as a Wonder Woman writer. Anyway,
But
yeah, go ahead.
you know, I think that because if you know, if this is already flopping and stuff, I guarantee that he will definitely rush to revive Steve, to solidify, to try to solidify Diana being with Steve
And then
and
watch.
having Trinity.
If I'm the editor, I tell the next writer, kill Steve.
Yeah. So kill him again.
Yeah, exactly. And make it painful this time. Anyway, so now here's a piece of good news. They finally announced they're making a Wonder Woman movie.
Okay, so this was definitely, I mean, you just throwing that out there. Um, Even the Wonder Woman like Instagram is it's bad enough that whoever the admin is for that account, they barely post. And they just did a story, like
Mm-hmm.
reposted the story, but it wasn't like an official announcement, you know. And the way it's thrown to this article, it definitely gives off that Zaslav um has pressured Gunn into like, you need to change things around or something like that. So I think that this was more so of a pressure thing, or maybe um Gunn is just talking out of the side of his neck, because it just seems so, like I said, thrown out there. And maybe it is being written, I don't know. But yeah, for it to not have just like this big grand, you know, uh, announcement, even to post on DC's Instagram or something like that, I just don't trust it yet. Until we get more information, which is supposed to be at SDCC after the Superman movie is released.
Yeah, so we'll see if they even announce a Wonder Woman actress, which they could.
Yeah, if the if um from Jeff Snyder um newsletter, his speculation, he believes that the movie that Gunn is writing now, maybe Diana will be introduced in that. James Gunn already said that it's not a sequel completely to Superman, which again, yeah, if it's not a sequel, then it could be introducing Diana. It could be a Trinity movie, but that's only speculation because again, Batman. I don't think that they will have two Batmans just yet. You know, so I would think that they would wait until Reeve finishes his trilogy and then introduce DCU Batman.
I mean, we'll see, but it's going to be very interesting to cover all this stuff in the near future, because it's like, at the very least, we got a Wonder Woman movie like in development, or like it kind of shows that like maybe they got like a pitch approved by the Marstons so they can move on. So
Right.
hopefully this amounts to something.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the way things are, it definitely feels like I wouldn't say like waiting another 4 to 5 years is kind of crazy, but for us to have to wait 4 to 5 years to get like a Justice League movie and another Wonder Woman movie is insane. So I would hope that things are fast tracked, or that, yeah, something is being written, because your priority is supposed to be your A-listers, not all of these C through Z listers.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, so I think that's a good place to leave it. We got a lot of information out here today. Most of it, Britt and my's succumbing to maddening rage, but it's James Tucker's fault. So, and Tom King's fault majorly. But I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, so Britt, do you have any stories you want to tease us with?
Okay, so finishing up.
Oh, real quick. You mentioned Tom King leaving the book, and when he does, this is going to be the Wonder Woman fan base. You ready?
Excuse me. But I think this is yours.
That is fitting, very fitting.
I love Mongo's like, oh!
That is great.
All right. But anyway, so what stories do you want to tease us with?
Okay, so Odyssey Chapter 2, I'm finishing that up. And yes, I am going to make Jared cry. I will. I am determined
Well,
to
you
do
sent
so.
me just 83 crying cat gifs for this.
I know. So I have that, and I have, well, I think I did get no, I did earlier. I got a cat gif for one of the ideas for for Odyssey, so I'm happy about that. Um, and also finishing up the fourth chapter of Shelter Story 1, and then a few more one shots that I have. I think I will be uploading the one shots. I'm trying to do like 2 a day. So finishing up editing one more, and then yeah, that will be posted within the week. Honestly, I can't wait. Like I said, really going back to Odyssey. I can't say anything because all of it is spoilers, and I want it to be like a surprise reaction from Jared. But I will say that it is very long, and I really wanted to drive the emotional part of it. And as we said earlier, we want to have Clark and Diana strain, but at the same time, still have them. You still feel that love that they have for each other. And so that's pretty much what I'm trying to convey here. And I think I have succeeded. So yeah, I can't wait to share chapter 2.
Exactly. So stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs with General Zod or Satan. That works too. And Steve Trevor belongs in the core of the frickin' sun. But Zois and Max about
Or
for
Pluto.
life. What?
Or Pluto.
Or Pluto. That works. Zois and Max about for life. No, whichever planet is farther from Pluto. Zois and Max about for life. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.